Welcome, everybody. Greetings. Happy Wednesday. And I hope you're as excited as I am for the beginning of what is sure to be a long and arduous journey. The long and arduous journey that is Games Bond. A lot of activity in chat already. Love to see it. Teravan, Goaty, Pudmuddle, Bilbo. Who else is here? Itinerant Soldier. Spiritual Chief of Gronks, Uche84, Macaw, Danzy Man, Sword Fam, Space Hoppercopter, everybody else, lurkers in chat, VOD viewers, wherever you are, whoever you are, welcome. I am extremely excited. A lot of speculation I'm seeing already as to what what we're gonna be playing, what we're gonna be doing. Don't you worry, don't you worry. Tonight is all about laying out the details, some of the details anyway. We're keeping keeping some details under wraps for now. But tonight will be the mission briefing. We're gonna lay out the basic premise of Games Bond. If you're unsure about whether we'll be playing actual Bond games or underwater aquatic fish spy parody games, Delphine Software, absurd point-and-click games, whatever else, you'll find out. I'm gonna be my own queue. Well, we'll see about that. I feel like there's some stuff that I might have to rely on Q Branch to help orchestrate, but we'll see. Itinerant Soldier, of course, thank you very much for your subscription. Appreciate that. 14 months of unspeakable horror. Coincidentally, 14 months of unspeakable horror could potentially be a description of what this entire project is going to be like. I mean, we'll see. We'll see if it's going to be over under 14 months. We'll see how much of it is going to be unspeakable horrors. A non-trivial part, I would have to imagine. But I'm sure this is going to be a lot of fun, because if I've learned anything in my several years of streaming at this point, actually I'm like coming up close on a decade probably. I haven't like streamed continuously or super seriously, but I'm pretty sure my first streams were in like 2013. Insane. But anyway, I digress. The thing I've learned over that time is that the quality of the game you're playing is virtually entirely disconnected from how much fun it's going to be to stream. In some cases, the relationship is inversely correlated, you know. But I think it's all about the premise of why you're playing something and how. And I think every time I've done a project like this, which granted, this is pretty much the second time I'm doing anything remotely on this scope, the first time, of course, being the Caped Crusade, the project where we played every Batman game over several years. But even smaller scale ones, I love being able to experience games I haven't played before. I love being able to place them into a context. I love, people digging deep and playing, maybe lesser known things, but also just in general, placing things in like a timeline, putting things in a context, whether it's playing every game in a series, games from the same developer, games based on the same license, games according to a theme, whatever it is, like being able to put things into perspective, I think helps with understanding and appreciating things. And even if the games themselves are shit, like it's just interesting to see, how they compare to other things. And in the case of something like James Bond, it's going to be interesting just to see, how do they interpret different aspects of the movies? How do they, depict the character? It's, there's no way this isn't going to be a lot of fun. And even when it isn't a lot of fun for me, I'm sure I'm sure it'll be a lot of fun for you, or I hope so anyway. I'm excited. I'm excited. Now, to make things perfectly clear, I am in no way committing or even pretending to commit to beating any of these games, let alone all of them. Yeah, what's up, Pepe Paco? Gundam, also I don't think I said hi. Why not? Greetings, welcome. Basically, the ground rules are going to be very similar to the Batman project, where for me this is not a challenge. That's why I'm careful never to use that word. I'm not a pro gamer. I don't have endless patience the way some people do with bad games, or more importantly, with difficult and frustrating games. For me, this is way more about experiencing these games and learning about them, and getting a more complete understanding of James Bond in video games. And we're almost certainly going to come across games, I mean, especially early on, that are incredibly difficult. And instead of banging my head against the wall for, 14 months of unspeakable horrors trying to beat one game, we're going to try our best to beat a game. We're going to try our best to exhaust what there is to be exhausted from the experience of a game, and seeing what we can learn about them. Some people aren't patient, just stubborn. Well, whatever quality is required, I don't think I have it. I mean, I've had people say to me that, they're impressed with my, whether it's patience or stubbornness, sticking to it with games that other people would have given up on. But to me, I'm like over at the, the baby pool compared to a lot of the streamers I follow, who are just like, not only have that amazing level of perseverance, but at some point just an actual level of skill that I don't feel like I can get anywhere close to either. Of course, I take joy in overcoming challenges, but I think I want this to be fun for me, for the most part, or well, not for me. I want it to be fun for me, period. But I mean, that's the most important thing. I want it to be. I don't want it to feel like a chore. I don't want to feel like it's a thing where I'm dreading booting up the stream because, like, oh fuck, I have to play this again. Like even during the Batman stuff, on some of those late, like Arkham Knight, I kind of felt that way a little bit. And that I even did like 10 to 12 hours off stream of that game, just grinding out side missions, because for some absurd reason in that game, you need to have 100% completion to get the real ending. And you need like not only that, but you need like a good 70-something% completion just to get any ending at all. Like, you complete the story and then it's like, well, before you're allowed to go get the ending, you got to clean up all this boring side mission crap. So now you have to do like 35 identical side activities one after the other before you're allowed to go see the ending. Like, it's terrible. But even so, like, just playing that on stream felt like a bit of a chore because it's so repetitive, and it was like obviously not overly challenging, but just like I was ready to move on. I did not beat all the Batman games. In fact, if you go check the spreadsheet, you'll see that there's a note on each of the games that clarifies a little bit what the final result was. Whether I finished them legitimately or whether I used some cheat codes or just ended up watching a Let's Play or something. Some games, some might argue that I didn't stick with them that long. And that's fair enough. There are games like Batman and Robin, which I think is endlessly fascinating. It's an incredibly ambitious game that I would really love to actually enjoy, but it's a struggle. And like, I used a walkthrough and save states, and I couldn't like understand what I had fucked up, and I like, after several hours of that, I was just like, you know what, this is cool, but I have no idea what I'm supposed to do here and how I'm supposed to, advance. And I would have loved to have overcome that hurdle, but at the end of the day, I was like, well, you know what, I could keep playing, but knowing, like, and I guess that's the difference between Batman and Robin and Arkham Knight, is that Arkham Knight, for all of its tediousness, you get very tangible progress. It's very easy to see that you are working towards some sort of goal, even if that goal is not fulfilling. You are getting closer to the thing that you're gonna say, all right, I made it here, we're done. But with Batman and Robin, the game is so, like, impossible. It's... You get that feeling of, well, I just game overed and my save points are fucked, so I just gotta start over, and that's fine. But if I put another 6 hours into this, what are the odds of me actually getting any further, of me seeing any more of the game, of me achieving anything I didn't already achieve? And if the answer to that question is a big fat question mark, like, that's around where I started to check out. At some point you get the, you feel like you get it, and then playing just feels redundant. Yeah, pretty much. Like, for me, I think it's, like, I have a lot of patience for bad games, but I have very little patience for frustrating games. So the worst combination is a bad game that's, like, super punishing. If it's, like, super awkward to control, but you get frequent checkpoints or infinite continues or whatever, like, yeah, I can stick with it for a good while. But if it's, like, confusing, you don't understand what's happening, and then you game over and you have to start over, like... Yeah, I don't know. I can't help but think of, Bilbo, that, I forget the name of the game, but the thing that, Macaw introduced you with during the Waterworld launch stream, dungeon crawler with 20 to 30 hours of mapping and making literally zero progress. See, that's the kind of thing I would, I'd be hard-pressed to even attempt. I mean, the opening was pretty sick, though. Alternate reality. Yeah, that's right, with the fucking karaoke vocal theme. That's pretty sick. Did I play the Burger King produced Batman platformer from 2006? The Russians just uploaded it. Well, given that I haven't been looking too closely at anything Batman since 2018, the answer is no. But also, what the fuck? Is that a... I mean, I'm guessing, I'm just inferring from context here that it's some kind of a mobile thing? Or is it an actual Burger King toy of a, like... Because I will say this, like, LCD games is another thing that I'm definitely... Outside of weird, obscure mobile games, LCD games is another area that I'm, like, not only am I not very well versed in them, they're so impossible to research, relatively speaking, that, I mean, had I made the effort, maybe I'd know more, maybe I'd feel differently. But it's one of those things, like, I often talk about buying stuff from Japan, right? Sifting through games on Surugaya or Yahoo Auctions or whatever, like, I have a decent idea of what the libraries look like for my favorite consoles. But if I'm looking for books, you're just in an endless ocean, with, like, a spoon trying to dig up the right thing. Like, it's just, you have no idea what the parameters is of your search. And I feel like with video games, like, console games are, for the most part, relatively well documented. Computer games, it's a little iffy. And then, like, the next tier down from that would be, like, mobile games and LCD games. Although, honestly, LCD games, I think, are better documented in a sense because there were... the market wasn't maybe as flooded with them as, like, feature phone games. It's a PC game. Well, I have to click that link. Oh, interesting. It's based on The Batman. We didn't actually play, like, the show that was called The Batman. This show didn't actually have any console games or anything. Huh. Developer and publisher Burger King. That was pretty good. Well, I'm gonna have to take a look at this some other time because as exciting as Batman is, we're here for Bond. What's up, Sanuj? Yeah, they should have Games Bond in the next movie. That'd be pretty sick. We must return to the Cape Crusade. Well, you joke, Bilbo, but we kind of are actually doing that in a few weeks, right? Because Gotham Knights is coming out, and I have that game pre-ordered, ready to go, and I'm hesitant to say that I'm excited for it because everything I've seen of it makes it look like everything I dislike about modern AAA games, which is doubly disappointing given that the developer, WB Montreal, made what's by far my favorite not only Arkham game, but Batman game, period. Arkham Origins. Rated #1 in the official definitive ranking of Batman video games, which you can find over at Jiggy.com. So to see them go from a game that I thought was amazing to a game that pretty much... I mean, I haven't played it yet, obviously, but it's it's an online multiplayer co-op game with quest lines and XPs and damage numbers going up and crafting and loot and rarity and all that shit. And given that I've thought that the sort of tightness of the narrative and the characters was like a major highlight of Arkham Origins, I feel like that style of game doesn't really lend itself to doing those kinds of aspects really well. So I'm very anxious about what that game's actually going to be like. Yeah, fucking 2% increase to lightning resistance on Nightwing's bootstraps. Like, oh, fuck me. Like, yeah, I'm exhausted just thinking about it. But I will play it. It's my moral obligation to play it. And I will, at the very least, partially play it on stream. Because it's pretty much the I don't know if epilogue is the right word exactly, but it's a appendix. is that a fair word to use? It's an appendix to the Caped Crusade. So I'm eager. Like, who knows? It might actually be pretty sick. I mean, my expectations aren't that high, but I'm hopeful that I will at least get enjoyment out of it. Addendum? Yeah, maybe. What's up, opponent? Happy Wednesday and happy Games Bond Day. I mean, there's been some pretty sick Batman games, so it's got a lot to live up to. I mean, it doesn't have Batman in it for one, but hey, getting to play the other Bat Family characters was always an exciting factor in games that had that feature, which kind of weren't maybe as many as you might think. Although maybe you wouldn't think it would be that many, because so many of the games were just based on the movies where there weren't really any other Bat Family characters. But whatever, I digress. We're not here to talk about Batman. We're not here to play Batman games. We're here for Bond. You started watching during the Caped Crusade. That's cool. That's cool. Yeah, like I think that was an ongoing thing for quite a while, of course. But I think that, like, not that I can remember very clearly, but I have to imagine my channel went through a reasonable amount of growth during that time. It's kind of, you know, I'm not streaming super often, super regularly, or super many hours, or with super high production values. So, you know, growth has been in fits and starts. But I'm hopeful that this project will be exciting for people. I'm hopeful that, for me, like, obviously growth, yeah, I might translate into revenue, but that's not the main thing. Like, for me, it's just, obviously, this is not my day job. This is a hobby. I do get the occasional check from Twitch, but that's like, it does, like, I definitely spend a lot more money on stream-related stuff than I make from it. So it's not a thing I make any kind of profit off of. You know, does it hurt? No, of course not. But that's not the point. Like, I'm not doing this to make it big or to make it my full-time thing or whatever. But the reason that I think growth is exciting is because it means connecting with an audience. It means connecting with people, and it means finding more people out there who find my dumb bullshit entertaining or interesting or worthwhile, or, you know, something to connect with for whatever reason. And that's very what's the word? I'm thankful for it. Hey, what's up, Running Wild? Like, so much of what I'm doing, whether it's this silly kind of project or just playing a handful of Japanese games that I just picked up, not to get too, like, philosophical or anything, but, you know, it's an extension of the same kind of, like, I've always been excited about games. I've always loved games, and there was a period, like, obviously when I was a kid, I'd play games with my friends and whatever, and, you know, even back then, I would sift through, like, fucking databases trying to find obscure beat-em-ups that were just emulated in MAME. Back when it was just like a not even a blog, but just like an HTML page that would update periodically. I would check like the MAME work in progress page to see like the status of the latest you know, MAME drivers, to see what new games might be playable this month or whatever, like back in the 90s. So I mean, that aspect's always been with me, but I think in particular having like there was a time where I was sort of into collecting but didn't really have anyone to share that interest with, and as a result I didn't necessarily play games very often, and I still don't really sit down to play games for myself as far as my collection goes. Like, streaming is what is motivating me to engage more with collecting as a hobby, and I think like streaming on Twitch for me is like an absolutely integral part to my like engaging in video game collecting as a hobby. And because of that, like, it's just more fun when I have an audience, when I have people to share it with. I mean, same thing. It's the same reason I like watching people on Twitch stream stuff that either I'm interested in or that they're super passionate about, because my favorite kind of streams to watch, I think, are like when I'm learning new stuff, when I'm seeing games I don't know, or learning new things about games I like. That's like my favorite stuff. So that's why I try when I can to sort of have, like, I don't make it a regular thing to just like go back to my favorite games and just play them to play them. I do it every now and then, but it sounds contradictory, but like I prefer playing unknown games to playing my favorite games. But like I said too, just doing this kind of project where we create a bit more of a context around things, that's another way of learning new things and finding new ways to appreciate things. And I find that shit really exciting. And I don't think there's any there's no better, you know, receipt, there's no better proof of people actually connecting with what I do than people actually deciding to spend their time watching me when there's like 50 million other things you could be doing. So thank you for hanging out, and I hope you guys will enjoy this as much as I'm sure I will. Wading through the unknown and finding cool new things is very compelling. Yeah, for sure. So let us move further ahead and establish a little bit of what we're gonna do here. We've actually got a significant chunk of people here already, and these people, you people, may or may not have seen or heard too much about Games Bond before tonight. So I figure the best way, the simplest and easiest and fastest way to set the stage, to establish what's going on here, is to run the trailer. I made a little video trailer for this because I felt like it. And in case you haven't seen it, well, you're about to. And if you have, then enjoy, I guess. All right, let me see if we can organize this. All right.
Check this out. Hit it. Oh yeah. Check this out.
There you have it. Let's get some jams back here. James Bond. Yes, the mission to play every James Bond video game. We got some hints there in the trailer as to what will be included. Of course, yes, we saw Stealth Affair. We saw. Well, what did we see? What did we see exactly? Well, we're gonna find out. What's up, Jay? Who could fail to be hyped? That's what we like to hear. I'm certainly pretty hyped. I'm very excited. So we got a few details there. It says 40 plus games, 20 plus systems. And the truth of the matter is that when I did the trailer, the list of games was not even remotely completed. I spent a significant chunk of time over the past week, past couple of days, hammering down some details, both to do with the list of games to be played, making sure that I have games available, ready to go and everything. And I thought, foolishly, like a goddamn idiot, that I had the list ready and done on Monday. And turns out that I did not, because Lord Macaw 45 decided to ruin my day by helping me out unsolicitedly, and gave me some details on some games I had actually missed in my research, in my frankly sloppy research, I have to say. That prompted me to look into a few things, and as a result, there's a few more games added to the list. I mean, it's still 40 plus games, of course, but there are more than when I first decided to put this thing together, and there may be more still. Other things could crop up. There's actually one game that that I know of that I didn't officially add to the list yet because I'm not sure if I'm gonna be able to get my hands on it. But basically, there are things about this project that are not not as fully organized as maybe one would wish. And it's going to be a constant work in progress. We're going to be adding some games to the list as it may come up. We are going to make some, changes and updates if some of the information and data I have is inaccurate, or that kind of thing. But the reason I was stressing over it a little bit is because the main thing I want to do tonight is to go over that entire list of games, sort of set the stage, and go over just like what we are about to experience over the next however many months, years. I'm not sure how long this is going to take, but when I first set this up, it's like, well, it's smaller than Batman, right? But there's a perhaps larger percentage compared to the Batman game list. The Bond game list, I think, to a larger degree consists of more modern games, which on average are longer. But it's not as many games. But now the list is filling up. And granted, not every game that's being added is like a very long game, but even so, I don't know how much smaller this project is going to be than the Batman project at the end of the day, which is exciting in its own right. But yeah, I used to say that my expectation for this project is that it's going to take most of 2023, if not beyond. At this point, I think it would be, with everything else that's going to come in between, like every now and then, with holidays, with new game releases that I want to check out, time-sensitive theme streams. We're not going to be fully focused on Bond from here on out. Like, we're still, like, my plan is basically to do Bond streams once or twice a week, depending. But I'd be surprised if we're going to be able to finish before the end of 2023. That's my expectation. But we'll see. We'll start, and it's going to be a quick pace in the beginning, probably, because obviously most of the early games are short games. They're going to be impossible games, but at least having seen what there is to see in these games, it's not going to be quite as time intensive, I imagine. But we'll see. We'll see. And there's going to be some additions and some surprises and some twists, let's call it. Not all of which are going to be introduced or explained today. But we'll go over the basics. And I am planning to play at least one game tonight. But we'll see how much further we get than that. But yeah, the idea, as mentioned, we're going to play every Bond game that we can get our hands on. We're going to play them in chronological order, to the best of my ability. Some games don't necessarily have very exact release dates, so we have to... we have to do our best to figure out the rough timeline here. There may be some games that are very slightly reshuffled in time to make a little more sense, to have, playing different versions of a game next to each other or whatever. But basically, chronologically. And we're gonna do our best to see what the games have to offer. I'm not gonna make any serious attempts at beating games that I deem too difficult or too annoying or whatever. But in those cases, we're gonna try to maybe try to find a Let's Play video to check out or that kind of thing, so we can see what the game has to offer. A lot of the games, especially the early ones, have a lot of different versions. And where it's justified, I'm gonna want to take a look at some of those alternative versions. But I've tried to the best of my ability to kind of pick out the one version of each game that's going to be the most representative and the most fun, like the most feature complete. To clarify, I'm talking specifically about the same game being ported to different systems. I'm not talking about games that are different on different platforms. In those cases, we are, of course, playing each unique game. But there are some of these computer games... Bilbo, you mentioned the text adventures, right? The Angelsoft text adventures are released on like DOS, Apple II, and I think there were Mac versions. They're text adventures. Like I can't imagine anything about them being particularly different on any different version. You might have an Amiga game. The Stealth Affair came up, right? So technically speaking, I'm not 100% sure which versions are available with the actual proper Bond license, but I would have to imagine that the Amiga version is the go-to version for that game. I haven't done a ton of research, and these are the exact type of things that I mean can change over time. And I'm happy to receive any input or feedback from viewers to help determine what's going to be like the ideal experience. But as far as I'm aware, like those, like the Delphine games were probably Amiga first, and they were ported to DOS, so the audio, like the music's going to be way better on Amiga, and maybe the graphics too. But if it's like an Amiga game that was ported to Atari ST, usually the ST version is like literally the same but worse in every conceivable way. Not always, but usually. And if it's an ST game that was ported to Amiga, it would be, the Amiga version would be a bit crappy, but it would basically be the same. That's kind of how that usually tended to go. So especially some of these like fairly dreadful games, we might not make a concerted effort to play every version. It's, when I did the Double Dragon and Final Fight theme marathons, that was kind of the whole idea. Like, let's be extremely thorough and play every version. But with Final Fight, that's like 4 or 5 games or whatever. And the first game had like 15 ports, and that was exciting. But with Bond, it's 40 plus games, and some of them have like 8 versions, and I just don't have it in me. And mostly, I just don't think it's going to be very interesting. I just think it's going to be kind of a waste of time. But when we can, we should at least take a look. And for some versions, or for some games rather, I do have maybe 2 versions or 3 versions kind of on hand, and it wouldn't be too much of a hassle to just kind of check them out real quick. But I'm trying to have picked out like the ideal version of each game. And we're gonna play them. We're gonna see as much of them as we can manage. We're gonna get an idea of what the level of challenge is going to be, and if we deem that level of challenge too absurd, we'll consider, you know, mission aborted and move on to the next one. Once we get into the 3D era, the 2D handhelds, yes, there's a lot of those types of games, and many of them, but not all of them, are movie based. Well, a bit half and half, I guess. And there's some movies, there's some games that have, well, more than 2 versions. I'll say that. But I don't need to be too coy, because like I said, what we're going to do right now is we're going to just fully dig deep into this list. This is going to be the mission briefing. We're going to go over all the details, at least all the details we currently have on hand. And we'll see how things look from there. So without further ado, let's debut a brand new, no expense spared stream layout that we're gonna see more of over the next year and change. Let's hope OBS doesn't crash, but if it does, wow, what a cliffhanger. If stream goes down, I'll be back very shortly. Hey, it worked. It worked. So, we are here for the mission briefing. Soletta, Yoda, I don't think I said hello, so greetings. Schubert, God Gamer Schubert, the world record holder, or at least the first person to 100% Macaw 45's Kevin Costner's Waterworld. Pretty impressed by that. Welcome. So, let me find my shortcut buttons here to do this properly. What you're about to see is basically what I spent most of my weekend on. It turned out that setting this shit up was more time consuming than I thought. I should have known better, but here we are. I'm happy I did it. So let's see if this works out. We're just gonna go over every game one by one, and we'll read a little snippet of information on it. We'll discuss very briefly what kind of a game it is, and I encourage chat to react, give me your impressions. Let me know if you are familiar with any one of these games. Let me know if you are not familiar, but you know, think it sounds exciting. And I'm extremely interested in hearing what games, because there's, I would say, a vast majority of the games on this list I've never played. Most of them I've never seen. Like when I went into the Batman stuff, there was a good chunk of games that I'd played. But with Bond, I feel like there's a very small amount of these that I've actually played before. Most of them, the only thing I know about them is like the footage I've seen as I was cutting together the trailer, pretty much. So I'm going in very blind on most of these. The author of the Angel Soft Text Adventures, the lead writer of Ultima 7. That's a career path and a half. What's up, Marmote SRL? Greetings. Well, let's get started. Mission number 1. James Bond 007, the very first officially licensed James Bond video game. I could not find conclusive information on exact release dates or exactly what would have been considered the original version, but as far as I can tell, the Atari 2600 version seems to maybe be like the more well-known one. I don't know. This came out on C64. It came out in Japan on the SG-1000. And I just wrote etc. because it came out in a bunch and I couldn't fit it neatly into the overlay there. So for all the games, I put together like this little snippet of text. Most of it just copy pasted from whatever sources I could find. So a lot of it's just going to be pretty bland marketing speak. Some of them I authored a little bit more myself when I kind of had to. So it's pretty, like, the information that you see on screen for each of the games, it's a bit, I don't know, hollow in a way. For some, I mean, it's going to differ from game to game. You'll see. But let's see what it says. In James Bond 007, you control James Bond and his multi-purpose craft. This craft can travel on both land and sea, can jump over danger, or fire at enemies on the many different levels. Each horizontally scrolling level in the game is loosely based on a different James Bond movie. The levels included are Diamonds Are Forever, The Spy Who Loved Me, Moonraker, and For Your Eyes Only. Good luck, Mr. Bond. Thank you very much, Marmot. Agent Jig. Yep, that's me. That's me. So yeah, this game, interestingly, was came about without a specific license. But when this game was first announced, well, actually, not even when this game was first announced, but when Parker Brothers first announced that they were releasing a James Bond game, slated for 1982, I think. It had, I can't remember what movie it was, but whatever movie would have been the latest one, I guess. Was it Octopussy, maybe? I'm not sure, but it had there was like artwork that had the same cover art, but with the movie title as well. And I think screenshots exist of like a completely different game, but that was for some reason or other scrapped and it didn't come out, and they just released this sort of generic James Bond video game in 1983, I think. Like I said, release dates aren't like super exact. So yeah, cover arts also, I've just gone with the best looking box that fit the best. So sometimes the artwork doesn't necessarily match the version that we're going to be playing, but it's still representative. Whatever, you get it. All right, mission number 2. A View to a Kill, the computer game. For Commodore 64, MSX, Amstrad CPC, ZX Spectrum, 1985. So yeah, you're not going to necessarily get every single instance of this happening because I was a little bit selective, but you could play a hazardous drinking game of trying to list every James Bond video game that uses the catchphrase "Bond is back" with or some kind of variation thereof. I feel like every time there's a new game, Bond is back, and like, well, I mean, he is. That makes sense. But it gets funny when you do all these things kind of one after the other. How there's not the most originality always. Bond is back on his latest secret mission. That's another thing. You may want to keep a tally of how many of these missions are Bond's most dangerous mission yet, his deadliest mission yet, his most exciting mission yet. It's pretty impressive. Every new game is more exciting and dangerous and deadly than the last one. So, I mean, every game, the quality should just be going up and up. Bond is back in every stream title. That's a pretty good call. Have I watched all the Bond movies? It's been years and I need to rewatch a bunch of them. Well, you are in luck, Bilbo. I've watched most of them, but it's been a very long time since I've watched many of the older ones. I am planning to watch not all of them, but the movies that are relevant specifically to games that are going to be played. And I'll be watching those on my Discord. So if you are interested in doing like community watch-alongs for movies as we are getting to their game adaptations, I guess you have a link right there, but it's a big mouthful of a bot post there. So let me just link this right here. You can join my Discord, and we have a little movie zone where we watch video game adaptations or movie adaptations of video games. We're currently doing Resident Evil month, so we're watching all the live-action Resident Evil movies for October. But interspersed with that, so we do that, like the regular movie watching happens every Saturday night, or most Saturday nights anyway. But with Games Bond, we're gonna sneak in some bonus Bond movies here and there. And with A View to a Kill coming up very shortly, I'm planning to watch A View to a Kill on Friday, preliminarily. So if you want to be able to sort of catch up, and like, I'm sure some of the late games we're going to be playing, you can kind of follow the plot, having not watched the movies. But as far as these 80s computer games go, I feel like you need to have watched the movie to have any idea what the hell's going on. So my intent is to watch these movies before we get to the game. So again, if that's something you think would be fun to join in on, feel free to join my Discord and tag along. SNK Hero, what's up? I think play all versions. Well, we'll play select versions of each game. We're gonna try to play the definitive version, and like I said, I might recruit some help from viewers, chat, community members, to help decide or help let me know basically if there's anything that needs playing. For this, I have the C64 version lined up. I may have some of the other versions on hand. I probably would have grabbed them, but I did some of this stuff like months ago, so I don't have it completely fresh in memory. But if a game came out on these particular systems, I reckon the C64 version is most likely going to be the best one anyway. But like I said, feel free to let me know if I missed something important. Hope we beat Christopher Walken in this one. Yeah, this one actually has some pretty cool stages. Like, it's pretty... so this is like the one movie I feel like I watched the most. I actually had the comic book adaptation of this movie as a kid, and I'm pretty sure I had it on VHS because I feel like I've seen this Bond movie like 50 times. This is like the one I've seen the most. And I know it's not necessarily regarded as a high mark exactly, but I know, like, I don't know, it's got an interesting reputation, I guess, because this was Roger Moore's last Bond movie, and like basically the specter, no pun intended, that hangs heavily over this movie is that he's fucking 89 years old in the movie, and he's talked frequently himself about how he realized on set when he was like having a romantic scene with a woman like 40 years younger than him, that it's like, this is weird, I'm too old for this shit. But it's got an amazing theme song. It's got some cool set pieces. It's got Christopher Walken. It's got Grace Jones. I believe Dolph Lundgren is in it very briefly, isn't he? I think so. He has like a bit part because he was dating Grace Jones at the time, I believe. It's even the poster here with the Golden Gate Bridge, like that's the climax of the movie. It's pretty cool. But it's I don't think it's regarded as one of the better movies necessarily. Yes, Bilbo, that is exactly right. You can get the full James Bond cinematic experience. I'm excited for that. I wouldn't say that I grew up being a huge Bond fan, but there's, like, in some ways I think I'm more primed to enjoy a lot of this stuff now, with my very well documented appreciation of schlock and earnest fun. Because James Bond is definitely schlocky as hell. I think there was definitely a period in my life where I felt that I was way too cool for stupid things like James Bond. And obviously some movies are dumber than others. They're all pretty dumb for the most part. But dumb doesn't mean bad. But it's yeah, it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be fun. Like I said, I haven't watched a lot of these very recently, so I'm looking forward to it. Bond is back. Now you take his part in these 3 exciting arcade/adventure games taken straight from the film: the Paris Chase, the City Hall Escape, the Silicon Valley Mine. Your name's Bond, James Bond, the world's top secret agent, and now embarking on one of the most important missions of your career. So, I will say this, the City Hall Escape, I have no clue what that, like, I don't know what part of the movie that is referring to. The Silicon Valley Mine, like, I don't really remember that either, except I know, I guess, although part of that is just having read synopses recently as I was putting this stuff together. But, like, Christopher Walken plays the villain whose plot involves some kind of microchip shortage or something. It's like, it's some kind of a, it's like Lex Luthor in Superman. It's some sort of real estate scam or some shit. I don't know, something like that. And it has to do with Silicon Valley, but I really don't remember much more than that. Roger Moore was 58. Tanya Roberts was 36. That's so interesting because I feel like 58 in the mid 80s was a lot older than it is today. Like, you got fucking Tom Cruise, who I'm sure isn't like the average by any stretch, but he's roughly that age, right? And like you have, I don't know, like even I mean, obviously it's not very recent, but like Sylvester Stallone in the fourth Rambo movie when he was like 62 or something, but you know, he was convincingly, he didn't feel like an old man per se. You know, there's that classic, like the Wilford Brimley line, you know, where you measure yours or someone else's age compared to the age that Wilford Brimley was in Cocoon, because he was like, I don't know, I think he was like 40 something or whatever, but he just had one of those faces. He looked like he was 75 by the time he was 30, kind of like Leonard Nimoy, right? He didn't like, he never looked young. Brad Pitt is 58. Yeah, exactly. But it's so much, you know, whether it's cosmetic surgery, whether it's like the way people live. People don't fucking smoke and drink and stay out in the sun the same way people did 40 years ago. Diet and exercise. There's like so many things that are just very different. So yeah, like people used to fucking look old. Like it's just like fashion trends and stuff too, right? Like you look at like fashion models or whatever from like the 70s or the 80s, and just the way they style their hair, the way they wear their makeup, like they just look old from our current like modern perspective. So it's funny because yeah, but like I said, like it's not just that Roger Moore was like made fun of for being old, like he himself felt that way. But I'm sure it doesn't really like come across the same way at all with people of those ages if it was today. Hot debates in chat over best Bond. I will decline from commenting. Although I think mostly because I don't really have an opinion. I never really had an opinion, but I think all of the Bonds are so different, so I think it's going to be very much up to the individual movies. Connor's flirtations with... that's one way of phrasing it, but yes. I mean, the movies sure are a product of their time, but I do think that's another interesting aspect of Bond. Part of why this project is cool, too, because it has that same quality as Batman, where the games... There's a lot of games from a very long range of time. The movies even more so, of course. Tonight, literally the 60th anniversary of the premiere of Dr. No. So Bond has been around for 60 years as a movie character. Of course, the novels predate even that. Games started coming around 20 years later. So we got about 40 years of Bond games. Well, not exactly, because there hasn't really been any Bond games in the last 10 years. But at least 30 years of Bond games. Brosnan was a good Bond with bad movies. I think that's a fair way of putting it, but I think they're all, and that's one of the things I like too, that the character, every actor brings their own take on the character. They have different material, but they play the character differently. Like, you couldn't put any Bond in another Bond's movie, or it would be like really weird, I think. Yeah, Connery, like I said, they're just from that era, right? I feel like you're like, not only, I mean, any movie from the 60s is likely to have some problematic things or like a very different cultural perspective, but a core component of Bond movies are also this kind of globe-trotting aspect. So there's always this like sort of, I don't know, imperialistic vibe of how it depicts other countries and culture and that kind of thing too. Anyway, we got a lot of games to get through, so let's move on. Mission number 3, is James Bond 007 Goldfinger. Bond is back in action. As Bond, James Bond, you're faced with one of your trickiest assignments, uncovering the fiendish plot of the brilliant but treacherous international financier Auric Goldfinger. Based on the film that made Bond a legend, this interactive fiction adventure is a chance for you to face the challenge that made movie history. That's kind of interesting too, right? That they kept making, like, View to a Kill was the most recent movie. It was like the current movie when that game came out. Goldfinger is from 1964. But it's obviously a very well-known and well-liked movie, so if you're going to just pick an old Bond movie to make a game out of, why not? Bond, where he fights the last boss.
Look, you!
Freeze. Wouldn't really necessarily be sure what that one is, because I'm so hazy on a lot of these movies, and I'm sure there's some I haven't even seen. Juju Fantabulosity, thank you very much for that follow. Goldfinger is definitely a little bit sillier than some, but maybe not the most. But that's kind of like, I don't know why I know some of these things, but that was directed by Guy Hamilton, right? And he was like, he directed a couple of Bond movies, and he always had this weird, goofy sensibility with some kind of comedic aspects that, I don't know. Because I think like From Russia with Love is, like, many people regard that as one of the best ones. And I think that one is like a lot more serious. Even, I mean, Dr. No doesn't really have sort of comedy in it that I can remember. I mean, he's like charming, so he maybe cracks jokes. Like the character of Bond is charismatic, but it doesn't have the like fucking Roger Moore mugging at the camera. But whatever, you know. I think it to a degree that became at least a core element of the Bond experience. Like there was, I don't know, there's some controversy when you have like extremely elaborate stunts, like the fucking corkscrew car jump over the river or whatever, and they play a fucking slide whistle, like completely like destroying the atmosphere of what's supposed to be the sickest scene, just turning it into a joke, which is, yeah, a questionable decision. But, I think without some of that, Bond is maybe a little dry. Am I originally from Sweden? I'm, yes. I'm also not. I mean, I'm born and raised, and I live here. So yes. Yeah, exactly, Socrates. Like every era of Bond is so different, and it every new actor coming into the role provides sort of a convenient time and place for a sort of a clean slate. But even, of course, within each, you know, any actor who's stuck around for quite some time, there's still, you know, if you look at Brosnan or Craig, who both had pretty lengthy runs in terms of time, like comparing GoldenEye with Die Another Day, like they're kind of different, at least. Same with Casino Royale and Quantum of Solace with like Skyfall and No Time to Die, especially, I guess. But, you know, they each have their own qualities and values for sure. Dr. No is semi-serious and becomes a complete meme by Goldfinger. Pretty much. But it's kind of a pendulum swing too, right? Like, because I think, like, GoldenEye wasn't, like, by 90s standards, it wasn't a particularly goofy movie. You look at it now, and it's like, you know, not to endlessly bring up Batman, like, but when Tim Burton's Batman came out in 1989, that was like a gritty, dark, serious take on Batman, because in the general consciousness, Batman was the 60s show. But you look at Burton's Batman now, and it's just like impossibly stylized and like it's clearly not set in the real world. But that's because like the standards are kind of shifting and things are sort of changing. So I think by its contemporary standards, GoldenEye wouldn't have stood out as particularly goofy. But you look at it now, and it's obviously not very grounded in any kind of realism, even if we're just talking aesthetics, compared to like the Craig movies. But then, like I said, Die Another Day gets some of the later Brosnan ones get sort of out there with the sci-fi elements. But you know, as mentioned, Moonraker from the 70s, like it's not like Bond didn't have over-the-top sci-fi elements. Hope and pray that at least one of these games faithfully recreates the underwater scuba battle from Thunderball. Yeah, that's the thing too. Like when you have like cutting edge technology to show like how head of the curve these like super spies are, and it's, you know, but it's in a movie that's from 50 years ago. So the tech isn't like very impressive by, you know, our standards, but it's interesting. It makes for a fun sort of time capsule. Yeah, it's like for me, like Roger Moore was the Bond that I kind of grew up with. So for me, like, I always associated Bond with that, because I think on average, like Moore's Bond was the most sort of jokey. So I don't mind that aspect, but it's definitely, it's not always great. But it can be good fun if you're like, if in the right mindset. But even then, I don't think his movies are all equal in quality either necessarily. Anyway, yes, Goldfinger, mission number 3, the first of 2 Angelsoft text adventures. Bringing us to number 4, A View to a Kill. Adventure above and beyond all other bonds. It's a pretty good tagline. Another View to a Kill game. You grip your ski poles tightly as the snow above your head suddenly explodes with ricocheting Russian bullets. I can't fucking read. Dudu Flatulato, thank you for the follow. Alright, 007, you tell yourself, let's go on with it. And so begins an adventure that takes you from Siberia to Paris to San Francisco as you pursue the evil industrialist Max Zorin. So it's going to be interesting to see the different takes on A View to a Kill. One more action-based, one fully text. I think text adventures is like... It seems like adventure games are like the obvious genre for Bond. Because yeah, he's like an action dude, but he's also like, he's an agent, he's a spy, he's like obviously a problem solver, not just, you know, using his fists. And it's a little bit surprising almost, just like, especially given how prominent the brand was in the 80s. I feel like there could have, well, as I say that, I guess that it's not even quite true, because in the early 80s, I guess, like, maybe it was stumbling a little bit in the second half of the 80s. Not to say that Timothy Dalton's movies weren't cool, but I feel like maybe early 90s, I guess, is maybe the worst. Like, everything, it was just basically dormant until GoldenEye. But the character and premise of everything, I feel, feels like it would make for good adventure type games. Would Spy Hunter on arcade be the best Bond game? To be honest, I don't even want to get into like Bond adjacent games, because that's a whole other can of worms. It's a good game, it's cool and everything. I don't mean to disparage the game, but there's a lot of those, and I don't even know how you would begin to rank them. But yes, there are at least these 2 text adventures starring James Bond. So what's next? Mission number 5. We got some incredibly quality video game titles here. The 5th game is James Bond 007 in The Living Daylights, the computer game. These movies are the ones I'm like the most excited to watch. The Living Daylights and License to Kill, the Dalton movies, because those are the ones I don't think I've ever actually seen. And the more I hear about those films, the more I get the impression that they're like, they weren't necessarily thought of very highly in their day, but everyone seems to appreciate them much, much more nowadays, because they were kind of the Daniel Craig Bonds of their day. Much sort of, I mean, especially coming off of Roger Moore, they were like such a pendulum swing in the complete opposite direction of a darker, more serious tone compared to, you know, 97-year-old wisecracking Roger Moore. Um, so this also came out on a bunch of different systems. Developed by Sculptured Software, who of course went on to make a bunch of Mortal Kombat home ports for Acclaim a few years later. The Living Daylights is a side-scrolling action game which features 8 levels of gameplay and centered around the Timothy Dalton movie of the same name. Beginning with a training mission in Gibraltar, Bond then assists General Koskov's defection to the west, rescues a Bond girl, fights off henchmen, and takes on an evil weapons dealer. Did Duran Duran do the theme song? I'm not sure who did. It's a banger of a song, though. I know that much. But yeah, I'm really excited to watch this movie when we get to it. So yeah, that's James Bond 007 in the Living Daylights, the computer game. Mission number 6. The even sicker title, Ian Fleming's James Bond 007 in Live and Let Die, the computer game. Even this fucking box looks like this such a it looks like a fucking bootleg third world country movie poster. It's so weird. I mean the fonts, the way they're sort of misaligned. I don't know. Is that what the movie poster looked like? I don't know. Airport novel cover. It's kind of weird. The knife I could see as being part of the actual logo. That's the one part that I think makes sort of sense. Yeah, why not? There's definitely a good number of Bond adjacent point and click adventures and similar, as well as other types of games, of course. But yeah, like you could make an interesting little appendix of just related similar games that aren't actually Bond. Yeah, they got a gun and a knife in the font. As 007, you have been given a top secret mission to find the drug baron Mr. Big, who's planning to flood America with tons of heroin. To help you, Q has given you his latest gadget, the fastest and most dangerous speedboat ever made. I'm sure it is most dangerous, because I bet you're going to game over in like 2 seconds. 007 must travel along the various waterways, shooting bullets and missiles at the red targets, avoiding mines and dive-bombing helicopters, planes, submarines, and boats. See, everything is out to kill Bond. But yes, this is a third-person boat driving act. It's actually a little bit similar to something like Spy Hunter, except it's on a boat. Although there are other more games that are more similar to Spy Hunter, because this at least has the kind of pole position sort of behind the vehicle view. From what little I've played of some of the versions of this, it actually runs pretty well, but it is also impossible. But I think that goes for most of these games, quite frankly. All right, what's next? Mission number 7. License to Kill. There we go. The other Timothy Dalton movie where he has very, very unflattering hair. It must be said. This one came out on fucking everything too. Amiga, ST, Commodore 64, Amstrad, CPC, DOS, MSX, etc. That means I couldn't even fit in all the formats. There's probably a Spectrum version. There's Spectrum versions of everything. License to Kill is a multi-level, multi-role game. You take the controls of helicopters, boats, and tankers, perform some death-defying parachute stunts, and take to the seas for a spot of barefoot water skiing. A steady aim and steady fire is needed. Shoot from the hip and take out the baddies. It's action-packed and closely follows the latest adventures of the world's best-kept secret agent in the brand new and most exciting movie of them all. It's mostly just advertising how sick the movie is. But yeah, a lot of these games, like, even though I've seen footage of them as I was like putting together trailers and doing some research and everything, like a lot of these blend together because, again, with The View to a Kill, I know the movie reasonably well, so I can sort of, oh yeah, that's the one with that. But a lot of these other games are like, man, which one is which? And Live and Let Die is obvious enough because the whole boat theme is pretty unique. Like, there are other games that have boat driving in them, but that's the game that's like entirely just on a boat. But yeah, this sounds like an Ocean-style multi-genre game. But it might be... I don't know, I think this is one that's like the top-down vertical scrolling kind of thing. Some levels are on foot, some levels are in a vehicle. Something along those lines, I suppose. We got a long ways to go still, so let's move along. Mission number 8. James Bond 007, the spy who loved me. He's Bond, he's back, he's 007. Isn't that a bit redundant? He's Bond. He's like... He's Bond and he's 007? He's back. Bond is back. I don't know. It's weird to me. Did that old Domark logo, though? Pretty sick. And this is actually a pretty sweet cover in general. Like, it's kind of cool. Like, a lot of these obviously use the movie covers. Some of them have original covers that are sort of reminiscent of posters. This is kind of a different style altogether, but it has that painted look. Although it kind of reminds me of more of a comic book, not like Marvel covers, but like these, you know, like Modesty Blaze or some shit like that. These like 60s, 70s adventure comics, which obviously is pretty, you know, not too far away from the movie poster style, but I don't know. This is a pretty sick cover. I like it a lot. Obviously, no particular actor's likeness was for Bond there, but you know, you can still clearly tell that it's Bond. Gold Key Comics. Yeah, it's just, I don't know, it's just got a cool vibe. The big 007 in the back and everything. But they use Bond is back tagline for every movie. They use it for a lot of games. Like I said, I excised that line from the description for some of these, just for space reasons and also for redundancy reasons. But there's Bond's back every so often. Bond is back. The boy. James Bond returns in a classic action-packed race against time to save the world from the crazed and power-mad Karl Stromberg. Exhilarating chase sequences on land and beneath the sea involve Q's specially modified Lotus, souped up and armed to the teeth. With one-on-one arcade-style shootouts, multi-level action, and top-secret codes to crack, this is the fastest-paced and most exciting Bond thriller to date. Yeah, James Bond will return, but that's like... That's kind of cool. I like that, though. That's got a certain swagger to it that I enjoy. Yeah, it's so weird, too. Like, there's quite a few of these games that are based on a movie, but not the current or most recent movie. Which, you know, if games are coming out more frequently than movies, then fair enough. But it's always kind of, like, interesting to sort of ponder why any one particular movie was chosen. You know, maybe one of them had like a particularly cool set piece that they wanted to build a level around, and they sort of extrapolated the game from there. I don't know. It's a little unusual. So that means that when we're going to watch these movies, we're going to watch the movies when games based on them come up. And obviously that means that the movies aren't going to be... We're not going to watch them in chronological order because the games based on them, you know, weren't made in that order. So it's a little bit peculiar, but I enjoy it. What's up, Mike? Greetings. Yes, Socrates. We'll be watching movies on Discord. In case people missed it, I'll drop a link here if I can spell to Discord. There we go. We do watch video game themed movies every Saturday, or most Saturdays. But we're going to squeeze in some extra Bond movie watching here and there as it becomes relevant. And currently, I'm planning on watching A View to a Kill this Friday. Friday night European time. So pop in for that if you're interested. Oh yeah, and of course we won't watch every movie because not every movie has a game. We'll watch the ones that are relevant as they become relevant. Because I want to have watched the movie when I get into the game, because some games, like, mostly it's just to appreciate the game better, to see what they took from the movie, but in some cases I feel like without having watched it, you'd have no fucking clue what's going on. Yeah, Baron 70 was in Live and Let Die. It's gonna show up in some games, though. I don't know if he's in the boat game, though. I guess we'll see. That would be pretty sick. Fucking boss fights. Slight retro fusion. Yes, of course, this game famously features the amazing music of Matt Furness, which was in fact the music used in the James Bond trailer. So if you're around an hour ago or so, you might have heard it. Moving on, we're only on game number 8. There's a lot of games left, guys. Game number 9, James Bond: The Stealth Affair, by Delphine Software. As British super agent James Bond, just back from holiday in Kuwait, you'll find yourself plunged headlong into the world of international espionage, sent across the globe in an attempt to find the missing super-secret stealth bomber. The list of suspects include a Latin American dictator, the Russian KGB, and possibly organized crime. So yes, this game was originally released as Operation Stealth in 1989, but Interplay, in their infinite wisdom, decided to, I was going to say posthumously, that's not really the right word, but they took the finished game and they got the James Bond license and basically had very, very slight changes made to the game, changing John Glames, who was an obvious James Bond pastiche to begin with, to James Bond. Although the plot of the game had, like, he works for the CIA or something, like, it's a bit goofy. It doesn't really tie into any kind of James Bond lore or fiction. It's just like, I mean, it's basically, I mean, when you play the game, it's like, well, it's Bond in everything but name. So they changed his name, so he's Bond. But it's an officially licensed James Bond video game, so we're gonna play it. And I actually played this as a kid. A friend of mine had this, and I remember getting absolutely nowhere in this game. Delphine's point-and-click adventure games are sort of infamously impossible. So this might want to be one of these games that we play with a walkthrough or with liberal hints from chat or something. We'll see. We'll see. But I know Fractal Mind Mike played... what is it called? The Delphine game that came before this? I'm blanking on the name. But he played that game and it looked super sick. Of course, the presentation is going to be top-notch with Delphine Software, but of course, Mike is more accustomed to playing weird old PC games than I am, maybe. But he seemed to enjoy it, even though it's tough. It's like Dynamite Deca changing to Die Hard Arcade. Yes, that's pretty much a one-to-one analog, where Dynamite Deca's plot is obviously... I mean, not the plot, really, but like the setting, the premise is very clearly cribbing from Die Hard, but the details are all different. But so when they changed it to Die Hard Arcade, like, yeah, they renamed the main character John McClane, and they put the Nakatomi logo on some stuff. But it's still fucking Wolf Hongo kidnapping the president's daughter, turning into a fucking cyborg and shit. Like, it's not, I don't know, it's not really, I don't know, it's still bootleg Die Hard. It's an amazing game, though. Future Wars, yes, thank you, that's the name of the game. Future Wars is more civilized. This game's kind of brutal. Interesting. Well, we'll see how it goes. We got plenty of highly uncivilized games to get to before we even have to worry about this game. This is the first original adventure not based on a movie, then. I suppose, yeah. As far as adventure games go, definitely. Games in general, I suppose. The very first game, I suppose, is a little bit up for debate. How based it is on any of the movies that it's referring to, because it's an extremely basic game anyway. So I guess you wouldn't know the difference, I suppose. But also, like, it sort of doesn't qualify in the sense that it's, of course, not based on a movie, because it wasn't even a Bond game when it was made. It was only made a Bond game after the fact. But we're definitely going to get some movie-style games in you know, that feel more like as if they're based on a movie, but with an original storyline. Anyway, moving along. After the stealth affair, moving from the highly advanced and sophisticated Amiga computer, it's time for the ZX Spectrum James Bond 007 Action Pack. This was a bundle, a hardware bundle that came with what I did not know existed until about 3 days ago, the Magnum light phaser, the light gun for the ZX Spectrum. Like, what the fuck? How does the Spectrum have a light gun? But it does. And it comes with 3 games. One of them is, I think it's The Living Daylights. It's one of the previous Bond games. But it also comes with 2 brand new games. First of which is Lord Bromley's Estate. 007 has been invited to Lord Bromley's estate for a clay pigeon shoot, but not all is what it seems, as European ambassador guests are at risk from terrorist assassination. Released as part of the James Bond 007 Action Pack bundle, this title was developed to support the new light gun accessory, the Magnum Light Phaser. And this is like the sickest part too, which beginning of a long-running trend, granted. The game features Desmond Llewellyn playing Q on the audio cassette explaining the backstory and mission. I'm not sure if I have that. I'm gonna have to see if I can find that. Like, that's pretty sick. Like, I guess the game, obviously, these games primarily would have run off cassettes. So maybe the other side of the tape, or maybe it's a separate tape, just has an audio recording of Desmond Llewellyn as Q, like, briefing you on the mission. That's like such a sick feature. And it's a really cool thing. Like, if you think about it, having, I don't know, like audio materials in general, like, I don't know. I think it's cool and simple, and it's like, producing audio isn't as simple as producing text or whatever, but it's still like, given how audio cassettes were like the main delivery mechanism for software in large markets for a long time, I'm a little bit surprised that this seems as novel as it does to me, because I feel like, man, it's something you could have done more frequently, huh? And I mean, I'm sure it was done every now and then, but it's not something I'm really familiar with. But I think it ties in really great with the whole secret agent spy thing too, you know? Not that Bond, like, famously would listen to tapes of briefings, but, like, I feel like you could really get into that, like, secret agent mood playing the game. You have this tape, and you listen to it in your headphones, you get the mission briefing from Q, and then you get ready to go. Like, that sounds like such an awesome experience. Like, that's so cool. Secret micro cassettes. Yeah, dude, like, that's sick. That's sick. The gun looks similar to the Sega Light Phaser. Maybe it's repurposed in some fashion. I really don't know. Like I said, I never heard of this being a thing until like 3 days ago. So as you might imagine, you don't put together a bundle with a light gun for one light gun game. So game number 11, Q's Armoury, also a light gun game by Divide by Zero. 007 must successfully train with one of Q's new weapons in the MI6 underground shooting range before taking on his next mission. So yeah, it's another light gun game, and of course these games don't have their own box artworks because they're just, I don't know, cassette tapes in this box, which also I'm just realizing that is, of course, The Living Daylights on the box, so it makes sense that that's the third game. I want to say that version had some very slight upgrades, but we're not going to play it a second time. Once we get to it, I might do a little bit of... I mean, it would be the Spectrum version also, so I'm sure that's not going to be the ideal version of The Living Daylights anyway. But if there's a particular reason to compare the two, we might try to do that when we get to it. President is Missing came with audio cassettes. That's pretty cool. Yeah, like I said, it doesn't... but also, just not knowing what it is, just from the name of it, it sounds like the kind of thing where secret audio briefing tapes would be appropriate. I mean, I'm not... like, I grew up kind of after this era, really. The Spectrum was not a thing here, really, but the C64 was popular. I had a lot of friends who had ones. So I was very familiar with loading games off tape. But, although, again, like, Amigas and even consoles were more popular. But, you know, I had friends who had older siblings and stuff, so they were around. But I wouldn't really be too familiar with how common of a concept that would have been. Spectrum looks like a Bond computer. Dude, I'm betting, like, I'm sure there's like TV ads featuring fucking Desmond Llewellyn. Like, that's the thing. Like, that guy seemed to have no scruples about doing anything for a quick buck, because he was featured, like, he has to be the Bond actor featured in the most things over the years. Even as far back as 1990, he was like, fuck it, I'll record some audio, sure. Where do I sign? Where's, you know, give me that paycheck. He didn't ever strike me as difficult to convince. And we'll see more of him in the future. Okay, mission number 12. Speaking of obscure computer games, from 1992, developed by Byte Pack, a graphic adventure based on the Bond film of the same name, Octopussy was released exclusively in Slovakia. In the role of James Bond, Agent 007, you were sent to India to track down the origin of a rare golden egg and solve the mysterious death of Agent 009. Originally available only in Slovak, the game was translated to English and re-released in 2018, featuring new music and new loading screen graphics. This artwork is this game came, it's like a cassette tape, right? So it came in a like most games for these platforms at that time, they didn't come in boxes, they came in like cassette tapes, sometimes maybe a blister pack. So this is just a cropped version of the tape inlay, and it's like, it's, as you might imagine, information on this game is not bountiful. You can find most of the information you would need. There's full Slovakian instructions and everything. Yeah, so it's not knitted, it's pixeled, but it's basically, it appears to me to be basically a printout of a photograph of a monitor or something like that. So obviously these are not Spectrum graphics, so this is not a screenshot from the game. But I wonder if maybe someone used Deluxe Paint on the Amiga to make this artwork or something, and they like printed it out, except they didn't have a printer, so they took a photograph of it or something. If you look up this game on the internet, you'll also find there's a poster that's straight up 100% looks like one of those, you know, Southeast Asia, Africa movie posters that are like painted based on a loose grasp on what the premise of the film is. But I haven't seen any proof exactly of, or explanation as to what that is, because it looks like a fold-out kind of poster thing, but it would not obviously have fit inside a cassette box, so I don't know if it came with this game, and if so, what kind of format or how it came. Like, it's, so I chose to use this artwork because that poster is a bit of a mystery to me. So this game is a bit of an exception in my selection, because as you might imagine, to the best of my research ability anyway, I don't think this game was officially licensed by Eon Productions. I'm pretty sure they just decided to make a game based on Octopus. This game was made by two people. One dude did the art and the other dude did programming. So I'm pretty sure this is just straight up a fan game. But as, like, however you even measure those things, as far, like, you know, in Eastern Europe at that time, this was a commercial release. Like, this was released by a publisher who presumably charged money for it. So, like, obviously, even definitions of commercially released, and, you know, and it's a Spectrum. It's not like a console where you need a license to publish things from the platform owner or anything like that. So it's a bit of a gray zone. But this game, not only its existence was too exciting to ignore, but the game itself looks, I mean, it looks incredibly cryptic and highly unplayable, but it looks fucking insane. This game was actually featured in the trailer. So I'm excited to play this. I feel like you have to have a walkthrough, but you also need to have like a walkthrough to the walkthrough to actually explain what's supposed to be happening when you follow the steps of the walkthrough. I skimmed through very like quickly a sort of playthrough video, and it's like you watch that and you have no idea what's happening. But two dudes decided to make a game based on Octopussy in 1992 for the Spectrum. It's just one of those things where when I learned of this game existing, it's like, yes, this is exactly why I'm doing fucking James Bond. To find shit like this that's not even like well hidden necessarily. Like if you go to Spectrum game lists or whatever, like you can find the game. There's a translation done for it. There's like a walkthrough. Like, you know, it's not, I'm not unearthing anything that hasn't been seen here, but it is at the same time, it's not necessarily this game is not featured on every list of every James Bond game. It's featured on my list though. So we're gonna play this when we get to it. Spectrum, yeah. I mean, it's always interesting like that too, like how these different platforms find their own markets, and you know, and you have these like. Not only was the Spectrum not really an ongoing concern outside of Europe in general, but even then, like markets were so much more what's the word? Segregated. I mean, in a literal sense, but also like. You had all these different competing computer platforms that were, like I said, Spectrum was not popular here, but it was obviously huge in the UK, but also some of these other regions. Like the Amstrad computers were big in France. MSX had more of a presence in like the Netherlands and Spain, with some like overlap here and there, but it's kind of interesting. And of course, you know, with the economic situation being what it is, like, and the political situation, it wasn't necessarily trivial to just like get games from other parts of the world, even neighboring countries. So you have these kind of parallel evolutions of various different markets and industries in each their own little cul-de-sac, sort of. I don't know, it makes for very interesting things. Like you wouldn't have thought that there would be an Octopussy game for the Spectrum in 1992 in Slovakia. But you know, it's here we are. Okay, moving on to mission number 13, James Bond Jr. Yes, we are moving into the console era, the first console game. There's 12 fucking computer games to get through before we start getting to some console games. Developed by Eurocom for THQ. Based off a cartoon series of the same name, the game puts the players in control of James Bond's teenage nephew, James Bond Jr. I don't know how that works. I don't know if you get to become someone junior, if they're your uncle. But I guess if they're James Bond, your parents are going to make an exception and figure out the logistics of that somehow. It's funny to think, too, that, like, I feel like the whole uncle-nephew thing was a weird Disney thing where, like, we can't imply that people have kids. That would be weird. But, like, dude, James fucking Bond, he's got to have, like, 600 illegitimate kids somewhere, right? Whether they would know to, like, well, I was going to say name themselves. I guess kids don't name themselves, but... I mean, I don't know. If you grow up and then find out that James Bond is your dad, then I guess you would name yourself James Bond Jr. I don't know. But, in any case, many scientists have disappeared, and it is Junior's task to find them and save the world. Agents have seen missile sites on an island, and they believe that Scumlord is responsible. All in a day's work. Get all the James Bond Juniors in the world, one big GoldenEye match. Approximately 1,000 James Bond Juniors. I mean, there would have to be, right? Surely there would have to be a lot of... He's got a lot of nephews around the world. Yeah, so I couldn't fit this in the description. I got this from Moby Games or Game FAQs or whatever, and this like just went on. But basically, this is a platformer that it's a European game, right? It's got platforming, it's got puzzle solving, it's got like collecting shit. I think it's all like levels, but it's a little bit maybe not impossible mission, which it's a bit of a stretch, but you could call that a Bond-like. But you have to, like, I don't know, use computer panels and find hostages and do this and that, and it seems a little bit convoluted, but probably really sick once you kind of get into it and understand it. I'm pretty intrigued. I think it has really sick music too. This was also featured very briefly in the trailer. So yeah, I figured some people might be surprised to see this game. Like, I'm sure anyone who knows about this game would be like, I wonder if he's going to include that. But dude, it's got James Bond in the title. This is definitely an officially licensed James Bond video game. Love late era NES games. Yeah, that's true. 92 is definitely a late. I mean, it's a European game, and it was definitely. It's not weirdly late per se, but it's obviously not exactly early. It's definitely a late era game. So James Bond Jr. for the NES, followed naturally by James Bond Jr. for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System, developed by Grey Matter. This adaptation of the animated TV series differs significantly from its NES namesake. The nephew of Agent 007 must foil the plans of malevolent scum agents who are hunting for rare artifacts that would allow them to dominate the world. Unlike the NES version, this version... Wow, I can't speak. Unlike the NES game, this version is a more action-oriented side-scrolling game without detailed mission objectives or puzzle solving. This also seems extremely fucking ghetto. McCaw dropped some music from this game in my Discord today or yesterday, and it's incredible, but not in a good way necessarily. It sure is something, I guess, is how you would sum it up. But even the art is like incredibly basic looking. I don't know. I think this is not going to be a very good game. Pretty boring. I can see that. But, you know, for science, it has to be investigated. It's part of the mission. We have to play every James Bond game. Man, how pathetic is that box, by the way? I'm not a big fan of Super Nintendo boxes because they always have this giant frame. And then they have this smaller box with the art. And then they have this illustration that doesn't fit the format at all, so it uses like half of that box. But even that doesn't like the composition is just terrible. It's like so shit. It's really bad. But I suppose it's probably indicative of the quality of the experience you're gonna have with this game. So let's move swiftly along to Mission 15. James Bond 007, The Duel. So we're moving into, again, like more of these generic Bond games, because there weren't movies at the time. There was like a big gap, right? Because License to Kill was 89, and that was the last movie until GoldenEye, wasn't it? So in this like prime console era of like 2D action games, there just weren't any movies coming out. So, I mean, I guess they could have made a Mega Drive or Super Nintendo game based on, I don't know, fucking Moonraker or whatever. But at least we got The Duel. And this, I actually had this game as a kid. Is this the only Timothy Dalton-based game? Definitely not. There are games... This might be the only game that feature his likeness in the game itself. But there were games based on Living Daylights and License to Kill. And we're actually going to see at least one of those return later on in one form or another, but not Timothy Dalton. So this was also developed by the Kremlin, which also means that it has a banging Matt Furness soundtrack. The famous Agent 007 must stop a crazy professor who has the same old dream as everyone else: world domination. Yeah, you can. We're going over the list in detail, Ingvars. So feel free to catch up on the VOD later on. We'll these info screens are going to come back, of course, as we go through this whole project. There will be a public spreadsheet available too with the full game list and everything, but I won't make that available just yet. I'm gonna string you along a little further. I'm gonna go through this one game at a time. But yeah, I think both of the Dalton games came out on like 8 different computer platforms. James Bond 007: The Duel is a platform side-scroller which requires precision in jumping as well as shooting. Bond must find and rescue hostages and disarm bombs in each level, as well as face some of his greatest adversaries in order to complete his mission. Yeah, this is kind of a weird one because it's actually the first, I would say, of something that would become kind of a trend in later games, or at least not the last time, of a kind of a greatest hits sort of medley of villains. So like every stage in the game, there's like 4 or 5 stages. This game is actually a little bit of a, you know, the kind of walk and gun game I've talked about, like a Rolling Thunder like. It's a Rolling Thunder like combined with Amiga ass Euro platformer with giant sprawling aimless levels. So it's not the greatest combination. This game is extremely difficult too, as you might imagine, being a British game from this time frame. But yeah, every stage has a like major Bond villain for a boss, or like in some cases there's like mid bosses too. Like Jaws is on the first stage, I think. Baron Samedi is on the second stage. Mayday is in the game. Can't really remember who else. Weirdly, I don't remember Oddjob being in the game, but he might be. He might just be on a later stage that I never got to as a kid. But it's kind of a cool game. It's got great music. Not very Bond-like, but it's good music. And pretty cool animation. But it's the like Bond is a little bit sluggish to handle. And bullets move really quickly. Enemies tend to sort of shoot from off screen, or you have to kind of shoot them before they come on screen, because otherwise you don't really have time to dodge their bullets. Like it's I don't know. I guess it's very trial and error heavy, but it's also a little bit similar to like Alien 3, where you have to kind of know where the hostages are, because there's like, I think every level is on a timer, and you have these kind of huge levels. So it's definitely a kind of a tedious, annoying game, but it's sort of cool. And I guess going by these first 15 games, I'm gonna go on a limb and say that's probably above average as far as quality goes. Needs routing and memorization. Yeah, did you play this for the Mega Marathon? I think it's a cool game, but it's fucking hard. I'd actually be curious to see if there's like any ROM hacks made for this, because I feel like you could, like, I don't know, I feel like removing or at least increasing the timer would probably make it more enjoyable. Yeah, or having maps might be a good idea. Yeah, I think I only ever made it to like stage 3 when I played this as a kid. Because the first stage is the boat, which is easy enough. The second one is the forest. And then I think the third one is the caves. Classic Bond theme right there. And there's like a... the last one is like a rocket launch base or whatever. But there's like one more in between. If it's like a laboratory or a... I want to say there's like a volcano, mine, something, but I'm probably conflating like caves and mines and volcanoes is the same thing. I don't remember, but I think there's 5 levels. Anyway, that's the Duel. Well, it's the Duel for the Mega Drive, because we also have the Duel for Master System / Game Gear. So this is definitely one where I'm gonna have to do a little bit of research to see which version is the preferred version to play. James Bond is back, guys. Have you heard the news? James Bond is back. Pitting his wits and firepower against many of his old adversaries in an attempt to rescue the daughter of Professor Michael Jones, who I'm sure I'm supposed to know who it is. Brilliant multi-screens and fantastic animated action make this a Master System tour de force. I remember watching Revenged play this a little bit when he was doing his Master System challenge. It looked kind of cool because it's one of those games where it reuses a lot of art assets from the Mega Drive game, but Bond, like the physics and movement is totally different, and it's a little bit more slow paced in a way, which is like probably to the game's benefit, because it means you can kind of react to stuff. Like you don't have to preemptively know where every enemy is because they're firing bullets. You can actually jump over them and that kind of thing. That's how I remember. Like that's the impression I got. I'd have to play it to be sure, but it's one of those games where I think there's a shot that this could actually be better than the Mega Drive game, even if it's on its surface it looks like a sort of downgraded port. I think it plays differently enough that it could have easily, well, it could also be, like, I could be wrong about this, but it's very possible that it actually sidesteps a lot of the issues that the Mega Drive game actually has in terms of its, you know, annoyances, both with how the combat works, but also like the giant levels and the timer and all that kind of stuff. So this one I'm actually really interested in. As far as the Mega Drive versus Game Gear, to the best of my knowledge, this is a situation where they're more or less the same game. At this time, the Master System was not really a going concern in large parts of the world, but the Game Gear had a little bit more of a presence in North America, for example. So it was not uncommon for games to be developed for the Game Gear, and from there would be a port made for the Master System from the Game Gear game, you know, for the European and South American markets, basically. And in some of those cases, you know, because the Game Gear and Master System are essentially the same hardware, the difference really being that the Game Gear has the capacity for more color, but also a smaller resolution screen. So often, if you have a game that's on Master System and Game Gear, the full screen is going to be of a certain size, and the Game Gear version just sort of has a tighter crop, so you see much less around your character. So you might have a game that's ported to the Game Gear from a Master System game, and it's sort of designed for the Master System screen real estate, and the Game Gear version is like weirdly cramped, and you can't really like play. But the opposite is also true sometimes, where the Game Gear is the original version, and on the Master System, on account of having to display more stuff on screen, the performance of the game is just much, much worse. So some games just play much better in the Game Gear version. So I don't know what is the case in this game, but to my knowledge, they are otherwise the same game. So I'll just have to see which version is the more playable. We're probably going to check out both, frankly, because compared to all this microcomputer nonsense, these consoles are not that complicated to emulate. So it should be fairly trivial to at least boot them up and see how they feel. This is PAL only. I reckon the Game Gear version might well have had a North American release, but I don't know that for a fact. I didn't actually do that much research on. I just know the game exists and I'm going to play it. I'm actually not sure. Number 17. GoldenEye. A game that needs no introduction. But yeah, that's quite the gap. You get these like late 8-bit ports in 1993 and then just like nothing until 1997. Just kind of crazy if you think about it. In this 3D action game, the player controls James Bond from a first-person perspective using a variety of weapons to eliminate his foes. However, many parts require the player to be careful, to stay unnoticed, or to snipe guards from a distance, since they will react to his presence and alarm their comrades. The game is divided into missions, and in most of them, Bond will have to perform other tasks beside killing his enemies. Disarming bombs, taking pictures of important evidence, or avoiding killing scientists. A very difficult task for an elite special agent such as James Bond. Avoiding killing scientists. What a challenge. Yeah, this is of course the Japanese box, but it still has the classic GoldenEye face. I just went with this because it fit the layout much better. It's kind of a cool box, and people haven't seen it. I don't like Western N64 boxes much for the similar reasons as the Super Nintendo ones. Oh, it's a Brunnen G, don't worry. You're here in the opening night stream. We're probably got at least a year of Games Bond ahead of us, so you're still in on the ground floor as far as I'm concerned. Going great, thank you. We're just going over the list of games. that we're going to be playing over however many months this is going to take. Yeah, this is a game that I like. I'm actually going to be really interested in playing this game. I have played it before. I don't think I've really finished it from beginning to end. I had friends who owned this game. I played it at, you know, shops and whatever. But I was hardcore into computer FPSs at this time. I was playing Quake on the internet. And before that, I'd played Marathon and I'd played Doom. And I was very used to like mouse and keyboard controls, playing online multiplayer, playing local network multiplayer. So that whole aspect of GoldenEye was like completely not novel to me at all. It's like, I mean, it's novel that you can do it on a TV or whatever, but like the controls were weird. I already didn't really like the N64. It ran at like 4 FPS. Like I wasn't impressed with it. I think it was obviously neat the way the game had these like mission objectives. I think that's like the one part of the game that I thought was interesting. But for the longest time, I always just felt like, well, it's a game I respect. It's an innovative game that's kind of interesting, but I never really liked playing it all that much. It doesn't control super great. It's pretty ugly. Runs like shit. But it'll be interesting to play it properly from beginning to end. And I'm looking forward to seeing if I can gain more of an appreciation for its like mission design and stuff, when I'm not just basing my thoughts on the game on like very hazy old memories. Yeah, the multiplayer again, like it just didn't appeal to me at the time really. I remember playing it when I was in college in this would have been in 04, 05. I had a classmate who had this like big gaming room in his like dad's garage or whatever, and it's pretty sick. He had like an N64 with one of those like Hong Kong pirate units or whatever. It looks like a fucking 64 DD. Just put in floppies or whatever. And so we played like him and one of our other friends, like who were way more like Nintendo guys than I was, and they were like big into GoldenEye and whatever. It's like, oh, sick, we gotta play GoldenEye. And we did, and I'd like barely play the game, and I fucking smoked them while complaining the whole time about this being boring, and like, man, what is this shit, whatever. And I was just like, this is not me like bragging about being sick at games or anything. It's more that like the game itself was so simple and like bland and weird, and it's just like, well, you know, the first thing you do is you change your control scheme so you can actually have free aiming on the analog stick, so you don't have to like have this super locked aiming controls which you have by default. And you do that, and you can like run figure eights around anyone else, and like the levels are very simple and boring. Like it was just, I don't know. I never cared for it that much. But it was yeah, the whole mission single player campaign aspect for sure was like the interesting part of the game. So that's the part I'm actually interested in actually doing. There's obviously going to be far more games coming up. Actually, come to think of it, this might be the first Bond game that actually has multiplayer. I'm sure some of the previous games might have, you know, some mode where you can take turns. Like even the very first game might have, you know, multiplayer where you just take turns playing. But obviously most games wouldn't have had co-op, because where you have like multiple James Bonds. I mean, that would be pretty sick, but not surprising that games didn't have it. So if that's the case, that's actually kind of a neat distinction for this game. And with other games coming up, like that's definitely something I would be hypothetically open to exploring the idea, at least, of doing like viewer games, or like trying, like just to see if you can get a sense of what the multiplayer is like in some of these games. This is not a promise, it's not a commitment, but it's definitely something I'd be curious to see, to just investigate if it's even a possibility. Because that might be interesting. But even that, like if that's the case, this is not really the game I'm the most excited to play. But it might be interesting. We have so many games left to go through. We'll see. We might not even be able to start playing games tonight. And if that's the case, that's fine. We'll get started when we get started. It's important to me that we go over this thoroughly. Because it's very... I think it's pretty exciting. but we'll see if we can pick up the pace a little bit. However, I'm gonna take a break. I need to go to the bathroom. I've been streaming for like 2 hours, so it seems like a good time. We're not gonna go through the entire list before I take a break. I'll say that much. But I'll be back in just a couple of minutes with more Games Bond. See you guys in just a little bit. Got hot debates on Discord here. Anyway, whatever. I'm back. Bonken, greetings. Thank you very much for the kind words. If, of course, you are a fan of my artwork, you can click that link right there and check out the full G.com gallery. But you can also just sit tight and hang out as we go through the rest of the list of games that we're going to be playing for Games Bond. Where's my buttons? There we go. Game number 17 is GoldenEye. Game number 18, James Bond 007 for the Game Boy. I remember playing this back in the day, and I think it was pretty fucking cool. And I don't remember getting very far in it, not necessarily because it was difficult or anything, but it's a kind of a Zelda sort of a game, sort of ish. Somewhere between like Zelda and fucking Game Boy Color Metal Gear or something. I don't know, but it's kind of cool. M makes a decision to send their best agent, James Bond, to investigate the whereabouts of the mysteriously missing Agent 008. As Bond carries out this latest order, he becomes entangled in his deadliest mission yet. Who'd have known? As James Bond, you must use all of your expertise to unravel a sinister plot. It is up to you to determine friend from foe as you uncover clues. Along the way, weapons and items will be found that assist you in overcoming the many obstacles placed in your path. It's gonna be exciting. I know this game, as you can see on the box there, it actually has Super Game Boy support. So, I definitely never saw what that looks like for this game. But I'm excited for that. I do have a Super Game Boy, and that's how we're gonna be playing it. I have a Mega, not a Mega EverDrive, a GB EverDrive. Well, I have a Mega EverDrive also, but that's not gonna help. But yeah, I remember liking this game. I remember thinking it was pretty cool. And I feel like it's a game that's like not talked about very much. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of games on this list that aren't super, household names. GoldenEye's shadow looms large, of course, but even so, this coming out like when that game was out and being so hot, like I don't know, I feel like it's, this was around the time of Pokemon and stuff like that too. Game Boy games were definitely not irrelevant by any stretch. So it's it seems peculiar to me that this game isn't talked about more, because when you see people actually talk about it, people seem to be very passionate about it and have very good things to say. So hopefully it holds up. We'll find out soon enough. Moving briskly along, Mission 19. Tomorrow Never Dies. We're back on track with new Bond movies coming out, and with them, new games. This was the first of many James Bond games published by Electronic Arts. Of course, Domark put out a couple of games, but up until this point, the Bond license had sort of been bouncing around between different publishers. But Tomorrow Never Dies marks the beginning of EA's extended tenure with the mostly exclusive rights to James Bond. As suave secret agent 007, employ your cunning wit and high-tech gadgets to survive multiple levels of espionage based on exciting situations from the blockbuster film, including challenging shooting, driving, and skiing game modes. Your mission will be dangerous, but you can handle it. After all, you're Bond. James Bond. Yeah, so this one, I think this is like the third-person shooter type thing. It'll be interesting to see how this holds up. I definitely have seen most of the Brosnan movies, but they're definitely a big blur, so it's going to be fun to rewatch those. And of course, at this point, the games have a reasonably higher level of detail and fidelity than in the microcomputer days. So they're obviously going to have a little bit better means of recreating certain scenes and set pieces and stuff. And actors and characters. This might be... Actually, I'm not sure. I was going to say... Well, obviously, it's not the first game to have a likeness, because Brosnan is in GoldenEye too. But I was gonna say, like, is his like face actually in this game? But probably, if he was in GoldenEye, then I guess so. Yes, it's not highly relevant to the topic at hand, but yes, I did in fact design a costume that made it into Dead or Alive 5. A proud moment, to be sure. That was pretty fun. I hope to have more opportunities like that at some point in the future. But in the meantime, I'm happy to draw whatever nonsense I feel like drawing for myself. The costume is the fitness idol costume. If you go to the gallery, you can see I've drawn a picture of it for DOA 5. Isn't the Bond villain in this movie Mark Zuckerberg? I have no idea. This is the one that Michelle Yeoh is in, right? I think so. That's pretty much all I know about this one. So that's number 19. Number 20. The World Is Not Enough. Black Ops Entertainment return. And Bond is back. Experience the intensity of being the world's top secret agent. Equipped with a full arsenal of Q-Lab gadgets and weaponry, you must be suave, resourceful, and lethal as you carry out action-packed missions based on the blockbuster movie. Are you cool under pressure, deadly when necessary? Of course you are. You're Bond. James Bond. So yes, this was of course the next movie. Yeah, I was gonna say, like, the timeline seems so weird, but that's because, yeah, GoldenEye, the game, came out in '97, which was the year that Tomorrow Never Dies came out, the film. So the Tomorrow Never Dies game was also like 2 years after the film, which seems kind of weird. But I think this one was at least more in time with the actual movie release. And for this one, EA put out the PlayStation version, which was kind of building on, I suppose, the previous PlayStation game of Tomorrow Never Dies. But there was also the N64 game, The World Is Not Enough, by Eurocom. Prestigious developers of James Bond Jr. for the NES. In contrast to the more streamlined shooting gameplay of the PlayStation incarnation of 007, The World Is Not Enough, this version is structured more like a successor to Rare's N64 game GoldenEye 007. There are 14 missions with 3 difficulty settings, and higher difficulty settings add increasingly complicated objectives to each mission. The game also features split-screen multiplayer for up to 4 players, similar to GoldenEye. Yeah, so this game is... It's interesting. Like, I think you can kind of say that this game is the first of several times someone is trying to cash in on the success and popularity of GoldenEye in a way. In the sense that they're like, well, that was a good formula. Let's try to recreate that formula. I've never played this game, so I think I might have played it for like 5 seconds, but I don't know how well it holds up. I don't know how well they managed to sort of recreate that formula. I mean, I don't know how much I liked the GoldenEye in the first place. But obviously, you know, especially developing for the N64, I guess they felt that, like, hey, this is what players are going to expect, so let's try to... And I mean, hey, there are worse templates to work off of than GoldenEye, regardless of how I feel about the game personally. Like, it only makes sense to try and you know, leverage that. And then the first, but certainly not the last time someone is saying, hey, you know what Bond game was really well liked? GoldenEye. How about we try to get in on that action? Mission 22. 007 Racing. Pretty interesting. There's some parallels here. There was Batman Gotham City Racer for the PS1, also probably around this time frame. And we also have 007 Racing. Q Branch has re-engineered some of your favorite automobiles with additional gadgets and firepower. You'll need everything they've got, plus your own uncanny ability to beat the odds. Free world is depending on you. Oh, and one other thing before you go, 007. Try to bring them back in one piece. Such sparse information that I had to just paste in a bullet list here. Few branch vehicles, exciting missions, and beautiful women. Ingenious gadgets, dangerous assailants, two-player action. Yeah, so a reasonably late PS1 release. This one, from what I can tell, is not very highly regarded. Again, another similarity perhaps to Gotham City Racer, which is not really a racing game. I don't know if this is either. From what it sounds like, it's a driving game where you have to use gadgets and weapons and do shit. It doesn't sound like a racing game. Beautiful Women doesn't get its own bullet. I think each of these bullet points had like a bit of text that went with them that I cut out, but yeah, it was listed like this. Yeah, so I guess they like no actors likenesses, I'm sure. Well, maybe, dude, fucking Desmond Llewellyn's probably in this game, right? Q's probably top billing here. But they just have these cars, which I wonder if even they are licensed. Obviously, cars are like a big thing in Bond movies. I don't know anything about cars. I don't give a shit about cars, so I wouldn't be able to recognize or name any of them. But it'll be interesting to play this and see how it's like structured and built. Like, it'd be funny if they don't have the licenses, but they still have to, like, obviously you're gonna have like a roster of cars, so they name them like after the movie, or do they get like made up names or something? Who knows? Because I would say like in 2000, you could still, I think you could get away with being pretty brazen about what car something is as long as you don't use the name. And maybe that would change later on. But because it's like, if that's your whole selling point, you would think that they would at least want to use the actual license names. I'm not sure. What's up, Helical? The Aston Martin DB5 on the cover there is Bond's most famous car. Take your word for it. Yeah, exactly, Ingvar. Like, obviously you can have bootleg stuff, but even then, like, I wouldn't know, not knowing or anything about cars, I wouldn't be able to tell how close, you know, the designs of any cars in that game are to actual specific real life counterparts. But they're probably very specific. I just wouldn't know. Yeah, the license plate is just like PlayStation buttons. Because why not, I guess. We're at the year 2000 for mission 22. Where will we go for mission number 23? Wouldn't you know, we got more handheld games. We're back to the world is not enough. This came out a little bit later, in 2001. Enter the sophisticated world of high-tech espionage as Her Majesty's greatest spy, James Bond. Experience all the intense action, spycraft, and state-of-the-art gadgetry synonymous with Bond. Work with helpful allies such as Dr. Christmas Jones and M to stop the treacherous villain Renard. Your mission? Save the world. Are you up to it? Of course you are. You're Bond. James Bond. Yep, so this game had 2 console games. This movie had 2 console games and a Game Boy game. I think... Oh, man. I was going to say I was trying to remember what this game looked like, but I don't think I've actually even looked up footage of this. Because I was about to say it's like isometric thing, but I'm thinking of a GBA game, I think. So I'm not even sure what this looks like. I think 2N Productions made a couple of handheld Bond games. We'll see soon enough. Wonder if the number of times we'll hear the Bond theme will be a number human brains can comprehend. We'll see. Like, I'm sure... I feel like for a bunch of these older games, it'll be interesting because... at this point, once you get to... I mean, especially... With GBA, it's a little bit different, I guess. But PlayStation and onwards, of course, the N64 games, too. Like, you just kind of get the sampled actual version I'm curious if we're gonna get like the individual theme songs for the movies and that kind of thing. There's so many aspects like that to licensed games like this, especially when the music is like a pretty notable part of Bond in particular. Like I feel like there's many other movies where you can make a licensed game and not have music from the movie, and most people wouldn't really know or care. But with Bond, I guess you can't really do that. So, you know, you get these like bootlegs attempts at recreating the theme on like a Spectrum or whatever. Like that's gonna be fun, I think. Anyway, the world is not enough for the Game Boy Color. Mission 24 is Agent Under Fire for the Xbox, PlayStation 2, and GameCube in 2001. We're finally moving into the next generation of consoles here. Driven by a completely new and original storyline, Agent Under Fire is a first-person action game that balances furious action and stealth tactics. An evil world organization has been replacing... Evil world organization? What's that even mean? Looks like a typo. Whatever. Has been replacing world leaders with their more docile clones, and it's up to you to put a stop to it. As Bond, you'll encounter villains and allies, both new and familiar, detailed 3D environments, and spy-packed fast action. What even is this text? Well, whatever. Yeah, I never played this game, but it's interesting because I remember it being like, you know, it's well regarded enough. But when Nightfire came out, it seemed like, oh yeah, this one's hella sick. And that one I actually have. I played that back in the day and I loved it. But when I was doing some research and looking some stuff up for this, like, I was a little bit surprised to see that it seems to be a not uncommon opinion that Agent Under Fire is, like, one of, if maybe not the best Bond game. Just absolutely packed with spies, yeah. So this one is notable for being a rare 3D Bond with a, you know, prominently featuring Bond himself in cinematics and everything, that does not have the license to any actor's likeness. Obviously, there's older 2D games where it's like you may or may not have you may not even have like Bond be visible in the way that you can see his face, you know. But this is like a modern, fully 3D Bond game with just a generic Bond. It looks fine, but it seems a little unusual with so many other games. Whether they were based on a movie or not, would use like the current Bond actor. But I'm really excited to play this one. Like I said, I didn't seem to think it was that great. Like, I never played it, but my impression from what you heard about the game at the time didn't seem to be overly positive. But if people are especially like coming back to it and thinking of it in a more positive way after the fact, I think that's promising. It's definitely, it seems very goofy. Like, I mean, it's of the Brosnan era. It's of the PS2 Xbox era. It's not like, it's gonna be a bit schlocky and juvenile, but I mean, it's Bond, right? That's not inappropriate. I mean, he might be inappropriate. I'm sure there's inappropriate things, but I mean, as far as adapting the license, being a bit schlocky is not inappropriate to that. Mission 25, Nightfire. Here we go. Lord Eurocom is back. Explore new heights and depths like never before. Infiltrate towering skyscrapers, take on treacherous underwater missions, and maneuver your sleek Aston Martin V12 Vanquish through the streets of Tokyo. New state-of-the-art upgradable gadgets and weapons, and original missions, including zero-gravity assignments, will leave you shaken and stirred. That's a Bond meme we haven't really seen brought up. But yeah, like I said, this game, I remember really, really liking this game. As they sort of allude to, there's driving stages, but mostly it's a first-person game. And I remember being so impressed with this. Like, there were two things in particular I thought were really awesome about it. One is that it had something called Bond moments, where like There's these like set pieces and stunts and things you can do. Like you can basically find these sort of hidden interactions that you can do, and each level has like a couple of them, and if you do them you get like bonus points and you get to see this little cool, you know, maybe it's like pulling a lever to drop down something that crashes down and takes out enemies, or hiding somewhere to sneak past a guard post or whatever. Agent on Fire also had the Bond moments. Yeah, I thought that was a really cool mechanic. Like, that was really well integrated. Bond moves, yeah, whatever it was called. The other thing that I thought was so sick was that it has, like, scoring. Like, it's... and after you finish a mission, you can go back and replay it. And when you revisit previous missions, you get, like... You sort of unlock the ability to do like score runs on each level. So it has like a full arcade style scoring system with like 007 tokens that you collect for points. But you're also scored on like time and Bond moves and whatever else. So it's like super fun to replay levels. And you can get like medals on each mission. And I think those unlock weapon upgrades and stuff like that. Like it was super fun to like replay missions. Like GoldenEye had a little bit of that, right? Because you could play missions on higher difficulty levels and it would record your completion time and stuff. But I felt like Nightfire really elaborated on that element in a way that was really fun. Yeah, you get the gold medal and then you replay for platinum unlocks. Yeah, the only thing I remember disliking about that was that you eventually unlock the gold Walter P99 and it looks like shit. And I was like, man, I want the black gun because it looks cooler even if it's worse. But yeah, I'm excited. So I bet like when we boot this up, I should still have my save file from 2002 or whenever. I guess, well, I probably played it in like 2004, whatever. But that'll be fun. Obviously, we're just gonna replay on a fresh save anyway, but it'll be fun to see. Is Nightfire the game with 2 versions? Let's find out. Mission number 26. 007 Nightfire for the Windows PC, developed by Gearbox. If you look at the box art, you may notice a omission of a certain detail. Namely, the Aston Martin V12 Vanquish is not on the cover because it's not in the game. It's a different game with different stages and everything, but it has like the same story and the same cutscenes and whatever else, from my understanding. And yeah, as it says there, the most notable difference is that it omits the driving stages completely. So I've heard people say that the story like doesn't make sense because like they had to cut out basically the cutscenes that are around the driving stage, or like whatever plot developments happen in around the driving. So there's like these weird jump cuts and plot holes in the story because it's just missing stages. 9 total missions. Yeah, I think Nightfire on consoles had like 14 missions or something like that. So yeah, who knows how or why that came about. But it is a completely different game. And I never played it. General consensus seems to be that the console game is superior for several reasons. But it'll be interesting to try this out for sure. There's not too many PC exclusive, like, obviously talking about like modern Windows PC type stuff. Whatever games ended up on the PC would generally just be the same games as on console. So this is a little bit unusual in that sense. Also, as you can obviously tell, unlike Agent on Fire, this game, both versions have Pierce Brosnan's likeness. But notably, they did not have his voice. So there's just this generic Bond voice, which I remember finding funny and a little bit jarring. Because you know what he's supposed to sound like, and then he just, like, a different voice comes out of his head, and it's just a little peculiar. But there you go. Mission 27. The third version of Nightfire, this time for the Game Boy Advance. The GBA received its own version of Electronic Arts' original James Bond adventure Nightfire a few months after the game's release on consoles and PC. Sharing the storyline, Bond must stop megalomaniacal industrialist Raphael Drake from achieving world domination, and general gameplay concept, first-person shooter. This version adapts a selection of levels from the other versions for the handheld's capabilities. Must have been a license. Well, it wasn't so much a license, I imagine, but oh yeah, you mean for the car stuff missing? It could be, but it could also just be a budget thing, right? Because for some reason, like maybe they were planned to be included, but they just couldn't get it to come together, and they had a hard deadline, so something needed to be cut. So fuck it, we just cut all the car stages, because it kind of seems like that way. If they knew from the beginning that they wouldn't be included, they could probably have worked around it a little more elegantly. But it seems like just the kind of thing where they could just have forcibly cut that whole aspect of the game. But as far as Pierce Brosnan not doing the voice, I'm sure that's just a matter of him not being available or being too expensive for the voice recording, because they obviously got the rights to use him. But you can't just, for him to do the voice performance, they have to actually get him to do the voice performance. But yeah, I never played any of the portable Bond games. This one is a first-person shooter. This was featured very briefly in every game featured in the trailer was featured very briefly, but there's a shot where he's in a ski lift and there's a helicopter outside. I think that's the end of the first mission. You infiltrate this castle where there's some sort of a party or a auction or something, and you, I guess, steal something, you sneak out, and there's this, I think you go to this like ski lift or whatever to get out, and there's this helicopter that shows up. You have to like shoot it down or some shit. So I guess that's what that is from. All right, 3 versions of Nightfire. So that's probably a first, right? Of 3 unique versions. Well, no, actually, The World Is Not Enough had 3 versions, right? Yeah, because it had the PS1, N64, and Game Boy Color version. Nightfire had console, PC, and portable versions. Mission 28. It's James Bond's mobile phone debut. 007 Ice Racer, or according to some artwork, Ice Race. A driving game based on the film Die Another Day. You're chasing Zhao and Jinx across Iceland with your special Aston Martin car to reach the Ice Palace and kill the villains. You have several weapons with you to damage enemy cars. The goal is to drive faster than the enemy and destroy his car before the time reaches 0 and before you run out of petrol. Very professional sounding description here. A whole game, but everyone's favorite gameplay, driving a car on ice. Yes. It's sort of Chase HQ a little bit. So as you can see there's actually 2 versions of this game. There's the Java like standard version or whatever. There's also the XN version, which was some kind of a platform or like system for Java games. And this was like an early version of it. Don't fucking ask me about the details. Mobile games is a deep rabbit hole that is very poorly documented in any sort of organized fashion. So anything you can find is going to be, just have to piece things together. But yes, interestingly, consoles, like, I mean, I'm sure it had to do with development schedules and lead times. Like, it's tricky to get a game out on time for like a movie release. I mean, broadly speaking, movies don't take as long to make as video games. Even 20 years ago, that was probably the case, but it's especially the case nowadays. So there wasn't a big console Die Another Day game, but there was Ice Racer for mobile phones. Yeah, so the XN version is like a third-person sort of pole position Chase HQ style view. The J2ME version is like a side-scrolling, I don't know, but it's like a side view kind of thing, and you like dodge obstacles going up and down and shooting at a car. No Madonna, probably not. No. Maybe that's they couldn't get the, they couldn't get a console version of a big budget game to come together because you couldn't afford Madonna. A lot of racers. There's multiple car-themed Bond games, that's for sure. Game number 29 is another vehicle-based mobile game, 007 Hover Chase. released in 2003. Following up 007's mobile debut Ice Racer, in 2003, British mobile game developer IOMO began work on 007 Hover Chase, utilizing the engine from their previous racing video game project Stuntman. The object of the game is to pass through checkpoints and get as far as possible before the hovercraft is destroyed and 007 is taken prisoner. So that's pretty funny too, right? This has to be the only Bond game where James Bond will inevitably be captured by the enemy. There's no evading it. You just will get captured. The landscape varies between mud, marsh, barbed wire lined paths. Which, riveting stuff there. Is it better or worse than ice? There are enemy hovercraft which attempt to collide with the player. Yeah, this sounds delightful. I think the only thing this has to do with 007 is the name. Yeah, so I literally learned of this game's existence today. So my data on this is a little bit limited, but basically, it sounded like I found a page that had a little bit of info that linked to like an interview with a developer, and like it says, they basically repurposed their previous game, which I'm sure was very common in this like era of mobile games, because you would have, I'm sure, super fast like turnaround on these kind of projects. So they kind of looked at, I guess, Die Another Day, which would have been the most recent movie. And like, well, or maybe even some other movie of like, well, what do we have in our game that sort of resembles some kind of scene or set piece? So I guess there's one of the movies where Bond drives a hovercraft. They're like, all right, cool, we can use this level, so let's just reshuffle things, repurpose this a little bit, and build a game around that. Because obviously these feature phone games were all very tiny, so you wouldn't have this like multi-genre, multi-mission thing. It would be pretty simple and focused around a basic concept. So makes sense. Game number 30 is 007 Everything or Nothing for the Game Boy Advance. The world's fate is in your hands. 007 returns. It's a slight variation there. To the GBA in an isometric action game featuring more than 20 missions across a number of exotic locations, including Peru, Russia, and a space station. The game allows 2 to 4 players to link up for multiplayer action, as well as connectivity with the GameCube version to unlock bonus content. I'm curious, like, at this point, multiplayer first-person shooting is kind of well established in the Bond universe. But like isometric action adventuring in multiplayer on Game Boy Advance with 4 players? Very curious how that, comes together. So this was, I remember this being sort of a big deal. Obviously, it was like far from the first time, but it was like almost standard at this point of an original plot and like presented as if it's a movie, basically, with the title, the famous actors and shit being in it. I don't know why this one stands out to me as like being marketed heavily around that fact, when like that's kind of what all the Bond games on console were at that point. But I think actually this was probably the first time they had Pierce Brosnan's voice. Maybe not in the Game Boy Advance version, but in the console version, which of course came out. But this one came out a little bit later. So normally these games would have come out at the same time. So we would have, with games being released on the same day, or at least roughly the same time, I would basically do what I would consider the main version, the biggest version first, and then we'd look at the subsequent sort of spin-off versions. But in this case, the Game Boy Advance version did come out first. It did come out, they weren't that far apart, like 2 months or something. But that even happened to be across late 2003 or early 2004. So with that discrepancy in time, we have no choice but to play the Game Boy Advance version first. So this one was not developed by Eurocom. This was EA Redwood Shores, who did a couple of other Bond games, I believe. Everything or Nothing returns to the third-person perspective, featuring a new and improved aiming system. So this is... yeah, I guess Tomorrow Never Dies, I think, was like the last third-person Bond game. Otherwise, it's mostly been first-person shooting. New gadgets allow Bond to go invisible, disrupt electronics, or control mechanical spiders, which allow him access to new areas. Okay. Game features an original story with over 30 missions, as well as co-op campaign and competitive split-screen multiplayer. Okay, so we do actually have a co-op multiplayer mode in this game. That might be a first. 30 missions. That sounds like a lot, but I wonder if they're really short or it's just like split up in some weird way. Strong concentration of Bond in 2004. Well, we'll see. We'll see. One of the extra content is same as Metroid, unlocking weapons, or in worst case, nude suit. Yeah, Zero Suit Bond. I mean, that'd be pretty sick. Or Fusion Suit Bond. You get the Guts alien suit for Bond. I mean, that'd be pretty sick. The 00 suit. Yeah. I'm actually not sure. I guess you could probably get like save data or whatever, because I reckon the bonus stuff, from my understanding, is only in the GameCube game. You don't get anything in the GBA game, which I guess sort of makes sense because they would want the GameCube version to sort of stand out from the others. I don't know, but I'd have to look it up. I'm actually curious now that you bring it up. I have no idea what the content is, but I feel generally games that had that sort of connectivity feature, it would be sort of maybe not the most exciting stuff, but it's going to be a little bit obscure, and that sort of makes it interesting in its own right. So, Mission 31, Everything or Nothing, 2004. We get anything else in this year? Let's find out. Yes, we did in fact get the next attempt to cashing in on the popularity of GoldenEye with GoldenEye Rogue Agent, developed by EA Los Angeles. Why save the world when you can rule it? Rogue Agent transports you to the dark side of the Bond universe as an aspiring 00 agent dismissed from MI6 for reckless brutality. Customize and upgrade your villain persona and wreak havoc as you make your unrelenting rise through the ranks. You'll cross paths with such legendary allies and enemies such as Oddjob, Scaramanga, Xenia Onatop, and Pussy Galore on worldwide missions of vengeance and demolition. So this game sucks shit, basically. I think what it's famous for two things. Brazenly and pointlessly and what's the word? Conspicuously, like stupidly overreachingly leaning on the GoldenEye name to buy deserved goodwill, and the other thing is just being fucking terrible. The concept is very funny. Yeah, so basically, we played this game on stream not long ago because I actually bought a copy of this game a couple of months back. And I bought it very specifically for Games Bond. I've actually spent the last couple of years keeping an eye out for Bond games, knowing that this project might come into fruition. So obviously, whatever games I don't have original copies of, we'll play one way or the other. But, you know, if I'm going to do this, any game that would be worthy of inclusion in a project like this is a game worthy of owning. So yeah, that's why I feel I can comfortably say that it's actually a terrible game, because I have played this and it's terrible. But yeah, the premise of the game, and the reason it's called GoldenEye. So yeah, you don't play as Bond, but you play as this other agent, and like you get kicked out of MI6 because you're just too fucking cool. And you get recruited by, I want to say it's Goldfinger. Like, there's a mission where, like, fucking Orc Goldfinger is robbing a bank or some shit, and you're, like, there as an MI6 agent, but you get, like, left for dead, and Goldfinger's like, oh, I could use someone like... I think it's him, or it could be fucking Dr. No or whatever. It's, like, some old movie villain. But in the scuffle, your eyeball gets destroyed or some shit. So you get your like replacement cyber eyeball that has like X-ray vision and superpowers and shit. Which wouldn't you know happens to be called the GoldenEye. So it's literally like you can even see it on the cover. He has an actual golden eye. That's why the game is called GoldenEye, Rogue Agent. It doesn't have anything to do with the GoldenEye movie. He just has a cyber eyeball that has a gold color that's called a GoldenEye. Like, that's how far they reached to come up with a reason, a justification for calling this game GoldenEye. So yeah, as it mentions, like, it has a bunch of villains. Like, it obviously characters from movies from all different timelines. I mean, that's fine. Like, obviously Bond has a very loose continuity. It's not. I don't have a problem with a Bond game having like 60s villains and 90s villains in the same game. But I don't know. It's like this game is like all premise, and the premise is kind of goofy. It's pretty cool in a way, like conceptually, to have a like playing as a Bond villain or whatever. But then it's not like you really fight. You're not like on the on the villain team and you fight MI6 and James Bond is the final boss or some shit. I don't think that's the case anyway. That would be actually kind of awesome. But does this have the Bond lights? I mean, yeah, it has like it has a lot of Bond characters. You just don't play as James Bond. Yeah, I like the premise. Wish it was good. Disgraced Agent John GoldenEye. Pretty much, yeah. Yeah, so I remember playing this a couple of months back, and it was just like very gray and very boring and very tedious, and like just gray hallways, so you can't really understand where you're supposed to go, and enemies are spongy, and it's just like nothing about it feels good or is very cool. So I look forward to seeing all of the game and see how it, if there's some redeeming factors to be found. But at first glance, it was extremely boring and just uninteresting. So next up, it's GoldenEye Rogue Agent for the GBA. No, it's even for the Nintendo DS moving forward. In 2005, EA Tiburon developed GoldenEye Rogue Agent, adapting the original console game's story and game mechanics to a handheld format. Featuring epic 6-mission solo campaign. Yeah, that's quite a stretch from the Everything or Nothing games that had 20/30 missions. Here it's 6 missions, but it's apparently epic, which sounds to me like every mission is like 2 hours too long, so it's going to be super fucking boring. Sharpen your lethal edge against infamous Bond villains in DS-exclusive virtual training mode. Wireless multiplayer mayhem for up to 8 players with only 1 game card. I mean, that's kind of cool, but it doesn't really mean much if the game's not any fun. Yeah, like 6 levels. That sounds rough, because it just means that there's no way, unless this game is like 20 minutes long, these levels are just gonna grossly overstay their welcome. But that's literally the exact impression I got from the console game too. I never finished, like, we played it on one of those unboxing streams. We're like, hey, let's just play some of these games I picked up recently. And we didn't finish the first mission, because it was like, I got bored of the game before I finished the first stage. And that's not a great sign. The dubious DS debut of James Bond. What did we get next? Undeniably a step in the right direction. It's 007 From Russia with Love. First time in a long time we just get a Bond game where they say, fuck it, let's just base it on an old one. Inspired by the 1963 movie of the same name, From Russia with Love lets you play as the classic James Bond as portrayed by Sean Connery, which was of course a pretty novel thing too. They have his likeness in the game and everything, complete with his voice, which is pretty cool. I feel like it's not super common to have, I mean, it's not super common to get these licensed games based on old shit in general, but to also have like full proper Like the artwork here is a kind of an adapted version of the poster, which looks awesome. And then you have like his likeness in the voice and everything. You're Russian and you love me. Well, that's very kind of you, Bruno. Thank you. Yeah, it even says there on the cover, starring Sean Connery as James Bond. You can drive in classic cars and use upgradable weapons and gadgetry to complete the game's non-linear missions. From Russia with Love also lets you invest in and upgrade your character to customize his performance. It's just a very funny sentence, but this is definitely a game I remember. I mean, you know, maybe it was coming off of Rogue Agent, but people seem to really like this one. Forgotten how many Bond games there were on Xbox alone. Yeah, I mean, these were all on... There were no exclusive. They're all multi-platform. But I've chosen the Xbox cover arts here because those are the versions we'll be playing for the most part. This one did also come out on PSP, but from all the research I've been able to do, it's not a different enough port to really justify playing it. It seems to be... I mean, I'm sure it's a little bit lower fidelity, but I think it's like the same developer, same missions and everything, as far as I can tell. But this is one of those things where I could be wrong, and if people insist or, you know, provide evidence of the fact that the PSP is different enough to justify playing through that version also, then we will. But as far as the research I've been able to do, it seems to be basically the same game. But yeah, I have a soft modded Xbox, and I do actually, you know, do I have it here somewhere? I do have the this thing right here, the PS2 MC2 SIO. I've never used it, but this is a device that lets you load disk images off of the memory card slot. I've heard compatibility isn't the greatest, but I'd be curious to try it out if the opportunity presents itself. But knowing that the Xbox versions are probably superior, and I can definitely get them to run, and in some cases I own them, that's going to be like the natural go-to platform of choice for all these multi-platform games. Yeah, put all my skill points in background. That sounds pretty good. Mission 35. Mobile is back. It's Casino Royale. We're at a point where, I mean, it's been the case for a while, but we cannot take for granted that movies are going to have big console games. It's another Java game developed by Java Ground. Imagine that you are 007 agent in Casino Royale. Complete 15 dangerous missions serving Her Majesty. Very well written here. Yeah, this was also added to the list today, by the way. So some of the text is a little bit rushed, but that's fine. I might tweak this. Casino Royale gives you opportunity to test your intellect, quick wit, and to try how it feels to be a mysterious guy whose name is Bond, James Bond. Yep, it's very, very Bond-like in its tone, the writing there. We can be a mysterious guy known as Bond. There were probably screenshots of this. I would guess it's probably a side-scrolling type of a deal. I don't know. I don't know. But it's a Java phone game based on Casino Royale. And it is sort of kind of the only direct Casino Royale adaptation. I say sort of kind of because well, you'll see. Yeah, you just happen to be named James Bond. So anyway, Casino Royale 2006. Game number 36 is James Bond Trivia for Java phones by 8-Bit Games. James Bond Trivia is the second Bond game this year from Sony Pictures and takes a more cerebral approach to the brand. There's 100 questions to answer, testing your knowledge of the Bond canon. Split into rounds of 5 questions, and you earn a bullet for every one you get right, which can then be used to earn bonus points at a shooting range in between rounds. Sounds pretty good to me. This would be fun because we might crowdsource Bond knowledge from chat, but we at this stage we will have watched at least some movies on Discord, so we'll have some Bond knowledge if we can retain any of it anyway. Yeah, by game 36, we should be able to miss James Bond trivia. Yeah, if there was James Bond video game trivia, we'd fucking ace that shit. But yeah, I like your confidence, chat room. We will be lore masters by then. We will be designated lore masters on Her Majesty's Secret Service. That is probably accurate. So yeah, we're in mobile purgatory for a little while there. Yeah, 100 questions isn't that much, unless they mean that you're like you do them 5 at a time, and there's like 20 levels, and there's a pool of more questions. But who knows? Maybe we'll just play it for more than 20 minutes, and we'll have seen every question, so we can 1cc the game, no miss. Anyway, moving on. Mission 37. Is James Bond top agent for Java phones? There's a bunch of James Bond games for mobile phones, guys. I don't know if you were aware. James Bond Top Agent is a turn-based tactical fighting game for mobile phones released alongside the 2008 Bond film Quantum of Solace. The game came preloaded on Sony Ericsson's limited edition James Bond themed Sony Ericsson C902 phone. How fucking cool is that? James Bond themed phone. I guess it's the phone he used in the movie, probably. You can buy like a James Bond branded version that came with a, well, probably not exclusive, but James Bond phone game. The game allowed players to create their own customized secret agent and battle other players, henchmen, and villains in a multiplayer gaming experience. Yeah, I saw some screenshots of this. It actually looks pretty cool. It's, yeah, some sort of a tactical combat game. That's kind of an interesting thing with like these mobile phone games. Like some of the, the Game Loft action side scrollers based on movies and shit were often very elaborate and impressive and cool looking. But sometimes they took a very different approach. I mean, arguably it's the same with like Game Boy and DS and stuff, where trying to adapt, like, yeah, trying to put a first-person shooter on the GBA. It can be done. It was done, but was it a good idea? Who knows? Maybe not. So let's try doing something else. So this kind of like turn-based tactical thing, like it could be a compelling game concept, right? I'd play fucking James Bond Tactics. I would at least try it out. But it would be difficult, I think, to like get a project like that greenlit if you're making games for a console, because there's this expectation that it's supposed to be a spectacle, spy-filled, spy-packed action game. But on a platform like Java phones, you have the the freedom, you might even say, to actually develop this completely different type of game experience. Does the phone have a laser and maybe some agent utility stuff? I would guess, sure, provided it fits within like safety regulations, which I'm sure would rule out most of the most fun gadgets. 40 plus games have been promised, right? So how many more are there to go? We'll see. We'll see. Game number 38 is Quantum of Solace. It did not just get a mobile game. Quantum of Solace actually did get a console/PC game by Treyarch. In the first of several James Bond games released by Activision, who took over from EA's lengthy grip of the brand, Treyarch uses familiar technology and mechanics from the Call of Duty series for their first-person shooter take on 007. Based on the scripts of the 21st movie Casino Royale and the 22nd James Bond movie of the same name as the game, Quantum of Solace follows closely the story of those movies, but elaborates many scenes and fills in some blanks. Wow, that's a strange sentence. I should probably rewrite that. But yeah, there you go. Casino Royale did not get a console game. It got a mobile game. But the Quantum of Solace console game essentially is an adaptation of both films. Because these films, yeah, I remember Quantum of Solace might be the last Bond... No. Well, I went to see No Time to Die. I did see Quantum of Solace in theaters. I remember everyone kind of hated it, but I mostly don't remember anything about it. But it is, by Bond standards, an unusually direct sequel to the previous film. Is kind of what I remember. So whenever we get to this point, we'll probably watch these films. We might even try to watch them the same night, back to back, to get the full experience. Giant Beard Entity, thank you for the follow. Welcome. Marquito, what's up? Yeah, Spectre was also a like, Craig's movies have been extremely up and down because, like, Casino Royale was well received. Quantum of Solace was not. Skyfall is, like, I think a lot of people would regard it as one of the best Bond movies. I thought it was great. Spectre is supposed to be a total piece of shit. Then I thought No Time to Die was mostly really good, but it had some kind of dumb stuff in it. Dumb in, like, not the fun, schlocky Bond way, which doesn't seem to fit Craig's Bond anyway, but more like... the villain wasn't, like, super great, but it had some really awesome action. It's really nice to look at. It was a fun time in the theater, for sure. Yeah, we'll rewatch these movies as they come up, and we'll see how we feel about them. So many working FPS cap unlocked for PC. Yeah, I have happened to own this on 360, so that's probably the version we'll play. It's maybe not the ideal version, but I feel like it's going to be, I don't know, representative of the typical experience. Plus, PC games, especially older PC games, are such a hassle to deal with anyway. Even if I'm generally definitely the kind of player who would vastly prefer to have, like, good frame rates and everything, for something like this, it's not going to bother me as much as it might for something I'm playing, like, more for my personal enjoyment. This is for science, so it's totally different. Quantum of Solace got a console adaptation. But it also got a second console adaptation, a completely different console game from veteran Bond game developer Eurocom. 2008 release for the PS2, adapting Treyarch's FPS into a third-person action game for the previous gen console. So it has, like, the same sort of cutscenes and story. Like, it's kind of a similar to the Nightfire PC type situation, where they adapted, like, the structure of the game, but the gameplay is totally different, and it's all third person. Blending high-octane third-person action with immersive and exotic locales, Quantum of Solace puts you in control of Bond's greatest weapon, his mind. Enter the ruthless world of international espionage and become the ultimate secret agent. Yeah, I'm super excited about this. So this was only on PS2, so maybe this will be maybe this will be when I finally try out the MCS2IO, whatever it's called, the memory card thing. Yeah, interestingly, there was a Wii version of Quantum of Solace, but that is actually a pretty much direct port of the 360 PS3 game. I had to do a little bit of research because I wasn't sure. Like, it seemed so unusual, because there's definitely quite a few games that came out in this time frame where the PS3 and 360 got one version of the game, and some other developer made an alternate version for the PS2 and Wii. But this is kind of a rare case of the Wii version being the same as the, like, Big Brother consoles, and the PS2 having its own unique version. What's up, Marquito? Yes, we are going to be playing as many Bond games as we can get our hands on in a mostly chronological order. So we're going through here this full lineup of games that will be played over the next months/years, however long it's going to take. Splinter Cell. Yeah, I remember Sonic Colors, and there's maybe some other Sonic game. I remember it was like Dimps made the PS2 and Wii version, and a lot of people would say that those were the superior versions. When the Ghostbusters game came out, there was a different Ghostbusters game on PS2 and Wii that had like, it wasn't directly based on the real Ghostbusters, but it had a cartoony aesthetics with character designs, kind of a little reminiscent of the old cartoon, and stuff like that. So it's very interesting because those games tended to be pretty overlooked because it makes sense, right? Like, whether we're talking about PS2/PS3 games or we're talking about Master System and Mega Drive games or whatever, if a game comes out like late enough, like cross-gen games that aren't like in our current era, for most of history, cross-generational games were often like just unremarkable or just compromised in such a way to run on the older systems that they usually weren't that great, or they were rarely at least the like premier version. But in some cases they were just a straight up different game altogether, which means that it might be better, might be worse. We'll find out. There's a lot of Bond games, it turns out. Yes. That's why this is a big old project. It's gonna take a while, but it's gonna be a lot of fun. So we got a console version of Quantum of Solace. We got a second console version of Quantum of Solace. And we got a DS version of Quantum of Solace from Vicarious Visions. The third unique version of Quantum of Solace for the Nintendo DS. We got some info here straight from the back of the box. Innovative touchscreen control. Streamlined controls have you navigating the world and engaging in combat using only one button and the Nintendo DS stylus. Deep upgrade system. Enhance your abilities and choose where to upgrade your character based on your favorite style of play. Sounds incredibly generic, but could be cool. I don't know if this is a first-person game or what exactly, because I think there was the first GBA one, but I'm sure there's more than one portable FPS. We'll find out sooner or later, I suppose. Will I be getting 100% or just getting credits for these games? You are making bold assumptions here. We are not committing to anything. We are investigating these games. We're going to be playing them, but I'm not committing to any kind of completion because we're going to be playing a lot of games that are going to be impossible, or at least human gamers such as myself. Like all the microcomputer games are going to be a complete mess. So anything that's going to be like too difficult for me to finish, I'm not going to feel bad about not being able to finish. I'll do my best, and if I reach a point where I just give up, we'll look into maybe using cheat codes or passwords or what have you to just see what the game has to offer. In some cases, I'm sure we will be watching some Let's Play videos, but at least we'll have the context of having played the game. I mean, I will have played a game, maybe you won't, but I will be able to get more out of that than just watching the video and not doing anything else. But of course, once we reach a certain point with these more modern console games, I don't expect that to be as much of an issue. There could be a chance that we just get stuck on some really stupid difficulty spike, or the game's just absolutely terrible. But I think we're going to at least make our way through every game. Like once we get, let's say, GoldenEye onwards, I definitely expect to beat games, because at that point, I think it's unlikely that we're going to have those like just too difficult bullshit games. Hey, what's up, NPC? Oh, we'll see. We don't know. The mobile games might also be super difficult and super weird, even if they're like 2 minutes long, so it's hard to say. But we're definitely, like, I can't see myself sticking with a game, like just continuing to play it after we beat it, because it's so, like, that's not the purpose of this. Stuff like Nightfire, redoing some missions for the scoring aspect might be fun, so we might mess around with that a little bit. But we're not gonna just like grind out collectibles or redoing trials or whatever it might be in these games just for the purpose of, or like, you know, GoldenEye, I'm not gonna beat it on every difficulty level. We're just gonna play probably on the standard one and like leave it at that. But that's a fair question for sure. We got a console version of Quantum of Solace. We got a second console version of Quantum of Solace. We got a Nintendo DS version of Quantum of Solace. What could possibly be next? You knew it! It's the Java phone version of Quantum of Solace. Developed once again by Java Ground. You've seen James Bond in action, but never like this. Cutting-edge technology, your enemies just got a lot more dangerous, and they can not only destroy your cover, but also dodge bullets and stay in hot pursuit. Immerse yourself in the high-intensity danger of the world's most famous spy with levels and settings taken straight from the new Quantum of Solace movie. This looked pretty cool in screenshots as far as these kinds of games go. Not gonna lie. Gotta unlock all the cheats in GoldenEye. Well, the cheats have to be unlocked for you to use them, yes? Does that mean that I personally have to do that? I'm not convinced. But that's mostly down to like beating levels in there's like a par time, right? Like you clear a mission on a certain time and that unlocks cheats. That's how that works, right? I think so. I haven't played that in forever. But yeah, that's 4 unique Quantum of Solace games. Plus, wait, wasn't there? Was the Top Agent also came out as a tie-in? But I guess it's not based on Quantum of Solace. It just came out at the same time. So I guess I don't know. Did that game and this game come out simultaneously? Maybe that one came out like slightly before. But who knows? All right, I gotta hydrate. Tiger Electronics versions of Quantum of Solace. Let's find out what's next. Number 42 is GoldenEye. It's not another version of Quantum of Solace, but it's another GoldenEye. Not the first nor last time that someone has tried to cash in. So EA had their attempt with GoldenEye Rogue Agent. Activision said, we're not fucking around. We're having Eurocom develop a straight up remake of GoldenEye 007. The 2010 version of GoldenEye places Daniel Craig's James Bond in the starring role of a retelling of the 1995 film and, of course, the 1997 Nintendo 64 game. This version is more in line with its contemporary FPS titles, featuring Wiimote aiming controls, QTEs, and other modern conventions. Like the original game, GoldenEye emphasizes stealth and espionage-oriented gameplay, allowing more than one way to complete missions. So this one I'm definitely curious about. It's... I don't know, like, without doing too much research, because I didn't want to, like, look up every detail, it's going to be interesting to see how closely this follows the original game. Because I'm pretty sure it doesn't... It's, like, not a literal remake of the same level, like, the same maps or the same objectives, but obviously it follows the same plot, so it's mostly the same scenes being adapted to missions. And just from seeing some video footage of the first level, the dam, like, it's... Some of it looks pretty similar, but I mean, you know, it's down to the same source material, so that makes sense. But it's such a weird thing to, like, let's make a game based on a previous movie, right? Okay, we've seen that a couple of times, but it's also a game that already had an extremely popular, well-received, well-liked adaptation. So it's like just an alternate retelling of the same game, basically. But also, instead of putting the actual Bond from that movie in the game, we're just going to put the current Bond, we're just going to transplant him into that movie, which is strange. Yeah, why not? I said basically the same thing. Like, GoldenEye never meant much to me at the time, because I was all into PC FPSs. Do we get bootleg Isabella Scorupco? Who knows, actually? That's an interesting question. Like, do they have, like... the likenesses of the other characters, the other actors from the film, but they just replace Pierce Brosnan with Daniel Craig? I don't know, that's such an odd thing. Just have like the current Bond in these old movies, but it's pretty funny to me. Yeah, so this supports like a bunch of different control schemes. You see even on the cover there's a Wii Zapper sticker. But it supports the Pro Controller, so you can play with like standard dual analog stick controls. But of course, it has Wiimote aiming also. Does this have Call of Duty respawning? Well, it's not made by a Call of Duty developer. Treyarch made Quantum of Solace, but this is made by Eurocom. The prestigious developers of James Bond Jr. for the NES. But also a bunch of other Bond games. So I want to say, yeah, Eurocom has made Bond games for THQ, EA, and Activision. So yeah, it's definitely leaning on and borrowing aspects of, like, and I think, from the N64 game. I think this game is probably not like super duper highly regarded, but it's definitely not despised the way Rogue Agent was. And I think Rogue Agent wasn't despised so much for its stupid premise and like the extreme lengths they went to justify using the name GoldenEye, but more so for being just a terrible game. But I think the premise itself primed the game for being mocked, and then when it turned out to also be terrible, it's just like a fucking slam dunk, This, I think, is largely decent, at least. It wouldn't surprise me if it's the kind of game where if someone is a diehard fan of GoldenEye, this just isn't going to impress them, because shockingly enough, this game isn't going to take someone back to their literal childhood and re-inject those same experiences as they had, playing this game 13 years earlier. And as such, people are going to be underwhelmed. I think that's just kind of, it's a thankless kind of thing. Because GoldenEye, I think, is just a game that's taken on such a life of its own that it's a tough thing to try to remake and recreate, unless you're doing something, like a more literal, just enhanced version of the actual original game. This is, obviously a completely different game. And even if it's a good game in its own right, anyone who's an actual huge fan of the original game, I think aren't gonna be as receptive to changes, I guess. In any case, what's after GoldenEye? Well, of course it's GoldenEye for the DS. GoldenEye is back. A slightly new twist. Get your friends. The GoldenEye story comes to life once again with an updated single-player storyline featuring Daniel Craig as Bond. This handheld adaptation of the Wii remake recreates the missions and gameplay of its console sibling in simplified form, with unique touchscreen mechanics and Wi-Fi multiplayer for up to 6 players. Yeah, it's kind of funny when you look at the marketing stuff for this game, the DS version specifically, not uniquely because the Wii version also emphasized it, but even on the DS, like, you look at the back of the box and it's like 80% of it is dedicated to the multiplayer, which, of course, the multiplayer in GoldenEye was very popular, the N64 game, so you want to evoke that makes sense, but it seems like such a strange pitch for a portable game. Like, I know that like, everyone had a DS, and, I've been to fucking conventions and shit where people just naturally gather and, like, 12 people draw dicks and PictoChat and whatever. Like, yeah, it's not crazy, especially if the game allows you to play multiplayer on a single cartridge. But, recreating, whether it's that, like, fucking dorm room experience or whatever it is, like, leaning on that kind of, man, remember this shit? Don't you want to relive this fun spectacle on your DS? Like, I don't know, it seems like such a strange thing. But then again, like, having a first-person shooter on a DS to begin with just seems, I don't know. I guess I'm just, like, conditioned to think of handheld devices as, like, not powerful and inherently incapable of delivering the type of experience I would want from an FPS, but it's not like you couldn't play an FPS on a fucking Steam Deck or Switch or whatever. But, it's, I don't know. It just strikes me as a little odd. But it's also funny too, I guess, where, like, in 2010, obviously online multiplayer was a thing. So to have this come out, and it's like, oh, you can gather all your friends on a couch and play multiplayer, but it's a portable, I don't know. The whole thing just seems a little unusual. GoldenEye is back on the DS. Back in POG form. Anyway, what's next? We still got games to get through. Mission 44 is 007 Bloodstone. From Bizarre Creations. Who, as far as I'm aware, are mostly known for driving games. And also Geometry Wars. Bloodstone stars Daniel Craig as James Bond in an epic original story developed by legendary screenwriter Bruce Feirstein, who I have no idea who it is, but I guess he probably worked on some Bond movies? Who knows? Players can engage in cover-based firefights, lethal hand-to-hand combat, and speed their way through explosive adrenaline-fueled driving sequences as they embark on a global chase leading to action on land and sea throughout Athens, Istanbul, Monaco, and Bangkok. Yep, so yet another high-profile, fake, not an actual movie, but we're going to present it as if it's a Bond movie, Bond game, which I love that kind of idea, and I think it's cool. Like, obviously, James Bond lends itself really, really well to that because it is such an episodic series. There's so many installments. If you're not very familiar with Bond, you could very easily look at any one of these games and just assume that it's a movie. And you get a lot of that, like the parts that I like about movie licensed games where you sort of lean on the imagery, you can have these established characters, you have the sort of aesthetics of the movie. With Bond, that whole universe is so well established and built out that you can easily have something that feels very steeped in that whole packaging, even if it's not actually based on a specific movie. So you still get the freedom of crafting, you know, the storyline and the set pieces and the mechanics and everything. You don't have to hit the release date of a movie or anything like that. So you kind of get the best of both worlds, which I think is cool. This was Bizarre's last game. That makes sense. Yeah, because I was thinking about it too. Like, it could not have been around much longer than this, right? Original stories could be amazing, but will they? I mean, same deal as with anything based on an actual movie, or the actual movies themselves for that matter. But I just think it's cool because it allows them to pump out more of these games. Because you think about it, like 2010, dude, you don't really get any movie licensed games at that point. Like, even like licensed games like this in general. I feel like it's a little bit more of a rebound nowadays. But certainly big movies, like, I don't know, I feel like the closest thing I can compare it to is stuff like, there's some Marvel stuff, you can get, you know, Gotham Knights and stuff like that, which is like in the Suicide Squad game coming out, which none of it is based at all on anything to do with the movies, but at least it's like the popularity of some of those movies, even though of course they're you know, there's other media too. And the Batman stuff, the Arkham games established itself as its own thing, completely disconnected from the movies, but like, they are properties that exist in the public consciousness. They're pop culture, mainstream media based things. And you have like 40,000 Warhammer games coming out about every 2 months. So, you know, certain licenses are alive and well. Avatar, yeah, I think, you know, Star Wars, of course, is another kind of evergreen thing. But even Star Wars, like, there weren't really games based individually on the new Star Wars movies. But there's been a lot of games set in the Star Wars universe. And again, I think it comes down to just, like, needing to have that freedom of not being constricted by the time frame of the development of the movie itself. But you need to have something that is as well established as something like Star Wars or James Bond to really have that freedom, I feel like. You know, there are exceptions. You have stuff like there's that the Bourne game. I don't remember what it was called. I don't know if that was maybe technically based on a book. You have some of the Lord of the Rings, Mordor stuff. You have the fucking Gollum game. But I think Bond is sort of unique in that, yes, technically, of course, Bond started as a novel, a series of novels, but it's still extremely steeped in the films, any Bond thing that comes out. Whereas I mean, I guess Star Wars is kind of the same thing. But anything else I can think of like that is sort of its other thing, and not necessarily something you think of as a movie license thing itself. Whereas any new Bond game that would come out, you definitely think of as a movie tie-in sort of game. Is, I think, pretty cool as a fan of movie licensed games. Your son worked on GoldenEye, Tomorrow Never Dies, World Is Not Enough, and also a bunch of the games. Interesting. Cool. Thank you for the lore. Appreciate that. 007 Bloodstone is mission number 44. Mission number 45, as you may suspect, is 007 Bloodstone for the Nintendo DS. The UK's top secret biochemical project has fallen into enemy hands. Only one man can unravel the sinister goal and defeat those behind it. Bond. James Bond. Developer N-Space's handheld adaptation of Bloodstone recreates the console game's third-person shooting and vehicular action, featuring unique touchscreen mechanics. Once again. 007 Bloodstorm. Pretty good, pretty good. Searcher Liner 22. Am I playing the C64? I'm assuming that's a typo. Yes, we're gonna play Bond games in chronological order, and that means that the first dozen or so games are all computer games. Some of them will be on C64, some of them will be on Amiga, some will be on Spectrum, some will be on DOS. It's a healthy mix of games. We're going over everything, so feel free to check out the archive of this stream after we're done, if you want to go through the whole list. There will be a public spreadsheet available, but there's still some details I need to work out, so I won't be making that public just yet. But this will be a very long-running project, so you'll be able to get all necessary information well ahead of time. Mission 46. Mobile is back, baby. It's 007 License to Drive, which is that's a good way to make, you know, lean on Bond aesthetics to make something sound a lot less cool. But there you go. Another vehicle-based Bond game. Grab the wheel as 007 and fight your way through a new James Bond adventure. A French arms dealer is attempting to reignite a war between India and Pakistan to expand his business. As James Bond, discover who is behind the plot and destroy his organization's capabilities. Race through city streets, down mountain roads, and treacherous rivers to keep ahead of well-armed enemies. Avoid attacks from helicopters and destroy hostiles with an array of Bond weapons and gadgets. 2011 Java phone game. This is another game I found out about its existence today. So, I don't know much about it, but I know I will be able to get my hands on a copy of this game. So we should be able to play it, and I was about to say enjoy it. I don't know if we'll be able to enjoy it, but we'll get our license to drive, and we'll see how it goes. Should have been a James Bond Jr. title. That's actually pretty good. Fucking driver's ed game. James Bond Jr. License to Drive. Should have made a James Bond the Third. Dude, that'd be sick. Mission 47 is Top Trump 007, the best of Bond from Glue Mobile. With every screen James Bond plus iconic classic Bond bad guys and allies, this is the world's coolest card game and the definitive 007 mobile experience. From Sean Connery to Daniel Craig, from Blofeld to Goldfinger, this Top Trump pack includes all your favorites. Pit character against character and grab as many cards as you can in the easy-to-play and compelling Top Trumps format. Play classic or tournament modes or head-to-head in two-player Bluetooth games. Interestingly, I guess the first card game, which granted on mobile or on console, you know, it's not a big genre, but if you think about it, we have like 5 different car-themed Bond games. Why not have a card game? Like gambling and playing cards, that's like a super James Bond thing, right? So why not have a James Bond themed card game? Yeah, I just realized that the title is misspelled there. It's supposed to be Top Trumps, not Top Trump. So yeah, another game I found out about today, basically. So I have not looked at a single screenshot or anything except for this title screen. I'm excited though. It's gonna make for a pretty unique experience, right? We're not gonna be playing a lot of other games like this. Sounds like some of you in chat are familiar with the Top Trumps brand. Either that, or you're just in shock and disbelief. I've definitely never heard of it before today, but from the description, from context, you can infer that it's a series of card games. So they're applying their formula and reskinning it with everything from Blofeld to Goldfinger. Doesn't seem like a huge stretch there, but whatever. They say it's the best of Bond, so they wouldn't be lying, right? Mission 48. GoldenEye is back again. GoldenEye 007 Reloaded is an enhanced version of the Nintendo Wii GoldenEye 007 remake, built on a new game engine with added features. In addition to all new HD graphics and an extensive overhaul to the game's multiplayer modes, Reloaded also features an all-new single-player mode called MI6 Ops. In MI6 Ops, players can take on various challenges using a large list of mission modifiers, with leaderboards ranking their performance. The PS3 version also includes exclusively Hugo Drax and a Moonraker laser pistol. Yep, that's the thing. The co-branding efforts with unique console-specific DLC that's going to be kind of whatever. Yeah, this is the remaster of the remake. I was definitely debating whether to include this on the list. I actually own this game, and I own the Wii version also, because as I said, I've been spending some time as I've been shopping for games. Whenever I come across a Bond game, even before I decided to do Games Bond, I was like, it was on. I'd been planning for it. I'd been wanting to do it for years. I just finally pulled the trigger now, and so I picked it up, and I picked up both versions, and I remember playing like the intro training mission when I was like, these are suspiciously similar. So yeah, they're kind of the same game, but I feel like because the Reloaded version came out a year later, and it has the MI6 Ops stuff sounds interesting, but I reckon we'll probably still play through the campaign. Funnily enough, like the PS3 version does support the move, so it has move control. Like basically, you have Wiimote aiming controls in the PS3 version also. But I wouldn't I have a move controller. I could play it that way, but I think I should play the Wii version with the Wiimote controls, and we'll play this with not Wiimote controls for a different experience. So we'll enjoy the new graphics and everything, and we'll just see if anything else is different about it. But it's GoldenEye, so it can't be bad, right? It has to be good, so it's worth playing a second time. But yeah, the MI6 Ops sounds like some kind of a randomizer, score-based, like arcadey mission mode, which actually sounds like a lot of fun. I don't know if it's really I think it's like any kind of campaign. I guess it's just like individual missions. Yeah, that's right, Dynamite. There was a limited edition for the Wii that came with a gold tinted Pro controller. So I guess even then it was sort of designed to maybe that's the better version, the better way of playing the game. So we'll be playing that on my Wii U, I guess, and I have a Wii U Pro controller, but I don't know if that actually works for Wii games. And I don't have any other Wii. Actually, I only have an incredibly shitty, busted third-party Wiimote. So before I play any other Wii game on stream, I definitely need to buy a proper Nintendo Wiimote, because trying to play Mad World was infuriating, because I kept getting fucking phantom waggle inputs constantly. It just did not work well. But yeah, I think the Wii aiming shit is such a quintessential part of that particular moment in time that I'm really happy that throughout this project we're gonna get the opportunity to experience a game with those kinds of controls for that kind of experience. I think that's it'd be a shame to miss out on that. I'll be retiring by the end of this. I don't know about that. We played every Batman game over a few years. I've played a lot of worse shit than we're gonna be playing for this, so it's just gonna, it's gonna be a while. But we're intersperse other types of games in between, so we won't be burning out on Bond. We'll have a healthy mix, a nice healthy diet of top secret James Bond missions and other stuff. Some Batman adjacent stuff very soon as it happens with Gotham Knights coming out, but got some I've got some Halloween things planned too. Some very light Halloween programming, but we're gonna try to squeeze some of that in before the end of the month. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff coming up, even just very soon, in fact. But yeah, I said it before. Like, my basic idea for this is I stream Monday, Wednesday, Saturday, and I'll probably mostly dedicate like Mondays and Wednesdays, and maybe if I have a different thing that I want to do over longer stream, I'll maybe dedicate a Saturday to something else. But it'll probably shift a little bit week from week. Games Bond is always going to be there as a fallback. Like if I'm a regular stream day is coming up and I don't have anything else planned, sure, we'll just continue playing Bond games. But as other things come up, we'll switch things out. I'm not going to be a dedicated James Bond only streamer from here on out. Just above average amount of scheduling dedicated to Bond. In any case, we've got a number of GoldenEyes, but what is next? Mission 49, 007 Legends. The titular 007 Legends at Eurocom return for another at-bat. 007 Legends is a first-person shooter released in celebration of the 50th anniversary of the Bond movie series. Its 6th chapter are based on 6 movies from all eras of James Bond, meaning every single actor. We got Sean Connery in Goldfinger. We got George Lazenby in On Her Majesty's Secret Service. We got Roger Moore in Moonraker. We got Timothy Dalton in License to Kill. We got Pierce Brosnan in Die Another Day. And of course, Daniel Craig in Skyfall. Except Daniel Craig is in all of them. They didn't get any other actors. Which I guess, you know, within the narrative context of the game, would be kind of weird. Like, I guess well, like, I don't know if that was the thing they should have done. I'm sure, like, it's a legal mess. I feel like it would have been a much better celebration if they actually had the different actors. It's a little bit funny that it's just Daniel Craig once again transposed into these other Bond films. It's also funny that, like, Die Another Day and Moonraker, I feel, are not very super highly regarded films, but I guess they had fun set pieces. I don't know. More ice racing, it looks like. But yeah, apparently the story of the game is, like, Daniel Craig is, like, you're in Skyfall, basically, and he's, like, having... It's like a fucking clip show, like a clip episode of him just... I don't know, I'm just thinking of fucking Riker being delirious at the end of season 2 or whatever of Star Trek TNG. I just remember, like, the fucking season finale was a clip show because there was like a writer strike or some shit. It's ridiculous. Anyway, he's like reminiscing about that one time he fought Oddjob in Goldfinger or whatever. So he remembers being there. So I guess that makes sense why it would be funny if he remembered being Sean Connery. But I don't know. This one you heard is great. I feel like I heard it's not great, but I don't know. I'm interested in, like, it seems kind of interesting. Like, this has elaborate first-person QTE boss fights against like Jaws and Oddjob and shit. So yeah, David Niven from Bootleg Casino Royale. Yeah. No 86-year-old Sean Connery from Never Say Never Again either. TNG was yeah, maybe, I don't know. I just remember it's like hilarious because the TNG cliffhanger season finales were usually fucking awesome, except that one where it's literally just a fuccking clip show of Riker just fucking like hallucinating memories of past episodes. I don't know, it's fucking dumb. So 007 Legends marks 50 years since the debut of James Bond on the silver screen. It was released sort of kind of as a tie-in to its then most recent movie, Skyfall. You'll see there's a little sticker thing on the left there with exclusive Skyfall DLC bonus missions or whatever. And I think this had a multiplayer also, because there's like DLC you could buy to like skins for whatever characters from Skyfall that seemed kind of whatever. But yeah, so for this game, we have quite a few movies to catch up on here, because I'm gonna want to watch the movies that we will not have already watched. Although looking at the list, I guess Goldfinger will come up very soon because there's the Goldfinger text adventure. License to Kill will also be playing, and Die Another Day. I guess we should watch Die Another Day to fully appreciate Ice Racer, and maybe the hover game. I don't know, hover race, whatever it was called. But we'll definitely watch On Her Majesty's Secret Service, Moonraker, and Skyfall. Yeah, like the DLC type situation. I actually looked it up real quick, and none of it is available to purchase. But I'm not sure if the might have been the 360 version might have had it included or something. I don't know. This was released for 360, PS3, Wii U, and the PC. But I own the 360 version as it happens, so that's the version I'm planning on playing. But we'll see. We'll be playing this in like fucking a year and a half, so who knows how things will develop by then. 50 years after 1962, this game came out, and 10 years later, we are here today celebrating the 60th anniversary of Dr. No hitting theaters on October 12th, 1962. We're also celebrating, which is a questionable choice of words there. We are marking the 10-year anniversary of a Bond game coming out. Because 007 Legends is, in fact, the final game on the list. It is the most recently released James Bond video game. Things have been a mess, I guess. I mean, the Bond... everything to do with Bond, completely unrelated from games, has had its ups and downs and been a bit of a mess. Like with obviously with COVID, that's like extra triple. Like No Time to Die was delayed by 2 years. But there was also like there was a long drawn out thing with Daniel Craig like not really wanting to do more James Bond, and there was a lot of rumors that that Spectre would be his last film and they would cast someone else. And I want to say that there was some rights stuff, like ownership of part of the brand has like changed hands. There was like a whole, I feel like there's been a lot of sort of drama surrounding James Bond over the past, maybe not like consistently for the last 10 years, but in the period since 007 Legends came out. And of course, big budget licensed games also having its sort of ups and downs. So it's not like super shocking, but it's a little bit strange, like looking at this whole list. Actually, it's not entirely true, by the way, because there was a mobile game, the name escapes me at the moment, but there was a 2015, I think, mobile game that was not based on Spectre specifically, but it was sort of tying into it the way Top Agent sort of tied into Quantum of Solace. There was a game for iOS and Android that was like a fucking gacha game or whatever, but it's no longer in operation, so it's not playable. It shut down in like 2016. So technically, I guess that's the most recent Bond game, but as far as like console games, as far as like actual paid products, 007 Legends, I guess, is the most recent one. I mean, I could have missed something. There's probably actually one or two more mobile games in between there, but given how frequently these games and how consistently these games have been coming out between 1982 and 2012, to have a full 10-year gap is like pretty conspicuous. I don't know that it's a gacha game. It just, I looked at some screenshots. It's like a free-to-play thing with, I don't know, some kind of cards. It's not like an action game or something. It's, you know, it's a menu game like most phone games these days. I don't know. Oh yeah, the music. I guess the music is not. I don't have the now playing thing on this screen. So whenever you ask that, Helical, I'm actually not sure. But if it was a Third Strike song, that sounds about right. But yeah, so that is the current, I should say, list of missions of games that we're going to be playing. But as I said, you know, there's been some very last minute changes to this list. I added like 6 games to this list today. Mobile games that required a little bit of research to, like, games that kind of slipped through the cracks, and there might be more that I have yet to find. So games could be added or removed to the list. If we find out, for example, that the PSP version of From Russia with Love actually warrants a full playthrough, then I guess that'll be added to the list. So this list is, it's malleable to an extent. Things might get changed, things might get added, but this is what we're looking at. Currently 49 games. That's 40 plus. I had previously about 40 games, 41, 43, and then today it got bumped up to 49. And that list, that number could go up before all is said and done. What do you suppose the chances are that we'll see more about the IO Interactive 007 game before GamesBond is finished? It's a great question. It's certainly something that's been on my mind. I'm extremely excited for that game. I'm a huge fan of IO Interactive. I've absolutely loved the recent Hitman games, and I'm super intrigued to see what they're going to do with the game. I don't think it's going to be very similar to Hitman necessarily, but I think they have the chops to do something, like whatever they come up with, I'm sure it's going to be interesting. I'm sure it's going to be a very fresh take on Bond, because it's not going to be a first-person shooter with some objectives. Like, I'm sure it's going to be more interesting than that. I'm sure, I expect it, I should say, to play up the sort of spy elements. There's going to be some kind of stealth, I'm sure, but maybe there's shooting, maybe you can put all your skill points in Baccarat. Who knows? But I'm intrigued. They're hiring. I can get the inside scoop. Interestingly, I think that IO Interactive, they have a studio in Malmö as well. They're not only in Denmark, but I feel like that's like one of the few studios, at least larger ones, in Sweden that I don't know that I actually have friends that work there. I've been working for the last 8 years, teaching and, like, you know, educating game developers. So I've had a lot of students who've graduated, and I mean, old classmates and shit too, who work all over, not just Sweden, but other places too, of course. So I have a lot of contacts at a lot of game studios, not necessarily the type where I can just go there and get the inside scoop, much less divulge industry secrets on stream. But I actually don't know if I know anyone who works at IO. So it's maybe not as far-fetched as you might imagine. Anyway. I'm excited for that game. I'm happy for them to take their time with it. I would say it's not completely crazy to think that we'll hear something about it before we're done. I think it'll basically end up in a similar situation as Gotham Knights. We might wrap this up and we still haven't really heard anything about it, but the moment any news comes out on that game, it's going to be very relevant to my stream and everything. We're going to look at it and we're going to go, all right, dude, what are our thoughts on this? Like, I'm going to come into that with 49 other Bond games under my belt. So I will have far more thoughts and ideas about that game than I do today, I imagine. So it's gonna be fun. And I mean, I would be excited for that game no matter what. But going through James Bond, the experience will only build up that excitement even more. So I cannot see a scenario in which the game comes out in time for us to add it, like just add it to the list, because I definitely hope that we'll be done with this list before, like, well before that game comes out. But we'll see. We'll just have to see. I would say there's definitely a chance that we hear something about it before we're done. But I think more and more games nowadays are a little careful with that, like 3-4 year marketing cycle. Even the Hitman games, like, I feel like have been announced pretty quickly before they come out, or like pretty soon before they come out. So it would not be shocking to me if the Bond game is like unveiled at fucking Game Awards 2024 for a Spring 25 release or something. So if that's the case, then we should be done well before that, I imagine. Even if we don't finish in 2023, I don't think we'll be still doing this in late 2024. Who knows? How many games in total? Yes. So this is game number 49, which is the final game on the current official mission list. Until we find 30 bootleg Chinese phone games. Yeah, Macaw45 just alerted us earlier today of the 2006 Burger King published Batman PC game that some Russians just put on the internet. So who knows? That could happen for James Bond 2. At a moment's notice, we'll just hear about an old game showing up. You never know. You never know. But you know, there are other games. We've talked a bit about Bond adjacent games. And I think I made it clear that the James Bond mission is to play every James Bond game. That does not include Sly Spy. It does not include Codename Iceman. It does not include other fake Bonds. The only fake Bond we're going to maybe play is John Glames from the Stealth Affair, depending on which versions are available and playable. But that still counts. Because there is a version where John Glames is James Bond. So we're not going to be playing that kind of Bond adjacent games. However, will the 49 games on this list be all that is played? We might have some top secret missions, some bonus missions outside of those 49 numbered missions. Details on these top secret missions are currently eyes only, confidential, cannot be shared with anyone. But we will enlist the help of Q Branch, do some research to get the intel to maybe one day figure out what needs to be done to complete these secret missions. These secret missions involve a number of games that for one reason or another didn't quite fit the criteria for the official mission list. Black Ops missions, if you will. And these are games that can be added to the list under certain circumstances. More details on how this secret mission stuff is going to work, we'll have to wait till the future. So we'll just leave it hanging there. There will be games that can be added to the list through the efforts of the James Bond community. And I will not announce ahead of time what these games might be. There may be hints in the future, who knows? But there will be more details on the top secret mission development front in the future. This component to James Bond is not going to go live as of today. It might require a little bit of research and development. I may need to hire Desmond Llewellyn from Beyond the Grave to figure this shit out. But this is an idea I'm pretty excited about, and I hope it's going to work out. And it'll create opportunities for adding a number of games to the list of games to be played, which whenever the conditions are met, we will basically just slot them in. My plan is basically that we'll just slot them in wherever we are in the timeline. They're not going to get like added to the end of the list necessarily. But like I said, details have yet to be quite worked out. Better not be a James Bond Bat John game. Who knows? Who knows? I mean, I'm sure there's fucking porno Quicks clones that has like a Roger Moore in it or something. That seems like something that would exist. I mean, if you can play as fucking RoboCop and Saddam Hussein and Robin Williams and whatever, Uncle Fester, James Bond isn't very far-fetched. But I don't know. Who knows? This is top secret. Nobody knows. But there's more to James Bond than merely the 49 official games. Maybe soon to be 50. There's one game that I know of that would be really exciting to add, but that is provided that I can actually get my hands on it. So the list is a work in progress, but the secret missions is like a completely separate thing. These are not games that I'm just gonna add to the list, but games that collectively we will work towards. Sly Spy is not a James Bond game. It is a original Agent Do Not Steal, completely unrelated. There are about 85,000 games with unrelated secret agents, and we're not going to play any of them because that is outside mission parameters. We're going to be playing James Bond video games, and that's it. It may have been a Bond game at some point, but it does not count as far as I'm concerned. Well, guys, we are well past 10 p.m. in my time zone, and that's when I usually wrap up the stream. And, well, wouldn't you know, we did not, in fact, have any time to play any games tonight. But we did get through a very thorough mission briefing, and I'm very excited, and I hope you guys are too. Game number 1, James Bond 007 on the Atari 2600, Commodore 64, SG-1000, etc. will be the first game, the first mission that we're going to be playing. And this will kick off James Bond proper on Saturday. I reckon we will possibly get through a couple of games, and the second game here is A View to a Kill. So I'm planning on watching this movie ahead of Saturday's stream. But I'm also realizing that Goldfinger is game number 3. And we probably are going to get to that too. So we should probably schedule a viewing of Goldfinger as well. We might try to watch both of them Friday night. Maybe we'll watch Goldfinger like Saturday morning, my time, which may be an awkward time for some of you. I apologize if that's the case. But if you're interested in watching these movies as we play the game, I mean, obviously you can go watch them yourself. That's perfectly fine. But I'm gonna try to watch every movie that is gonna come up before we play the game. And I reckon we'll probably make our way through. I don't think we're going to fill a whole Saturday stream with the first 2 games. So probably we're going to get to Goldfinger. So I'm going to try to figure that out. But I will be watching the movies to the best of my ability, make it known ahead of time when I will be watching them. And I'll be watching them on Discord. So anyone who is interested in joining in can join my Discord to get some Bond lore ahead of each game as it comes up. So for now, we're looking at... well, here we go. I didn't need to do that. Thank you, Vinot. We're going to watch at least one Bond movie on Friday night. Maybe we'll watch A View to a Kill and Goldfinger back to back. We'll figure it out. Stream will return on Saturday. I will be streaming from 1 p.m. Central European summertime. On Saturday night, we will be continuing Resident Evil month on Discord, where we are currently watching. We're spending October watching all of the live-action Resident Evil movies, and we are currently up to the 4th movie, Resident Evil Afterlife, on Saturday night at 9 p.m. So feel free to join in for that if that is something you're interested in as well. But yeah, that is going to be it for me tonight. I've had a lot of people hang out. It's been fun seeing you guys active in chat. I'm very excited to get started proper on Games Bond, and I hope to see more of you guys show up for Saturday's stream as well. As we wrap up, let me figure out who is streaming so we can raid them. What is happening on Twitch? A lot of people streaming, but who am I actually gonna rate? Trying to find someone I don't like rate all the time. Duke Donuts. It's actually been a while. I feel like I rate him a lot, but it's been a while since last. So let's go say hi to Duke. He's streaming video games. I like video games. Seems like a good time. So let's go say hi to Duke. Let's see what video games he's playing, and berate him for not hanging out here on my stream. What's he doing off streaming on his own when I'm streaming? It's a bit rude. Actually, I'm just kidding. Don't do that. Anyway, thanks for hanging out, guys. I'm excited to get started on Saturday. Hope to see you guys then. Till then, thank you for watching. Have a nice rest of your week. Take care, and bye.